There's no law requiring a doctor to cure you when there's a cure available. You assume, because you're innocent, that he wants to cure you. Let's say you have diabetes, and I can cure you in 2 to 14 days of diabetes. The doctor makes $300 from a office call. Actually, the pharmacist will make more money from the medications, right? But if he can treat you for 25 years rather than cure you in 3 weeks, he makes $750,000. So it's not unethical, it's not unlawful for him to treat you for 25 years. And so which way is he going to go? $750,000 or $300,000? And that's the problem with human medicine, is insurance. It's the worst possible thing that can happen to human medicine, because it made the doctors figure out how to get the insurance. When they treat you, they ameliorate or dampen down symptoms. They do not cure the disease. Every drug, with the exception of antibiotics, which can kill, let's say you have a strep throat, there's antibiotics that can cure strep throat. If you have syphilis, penicillin will cure syphilis. But it's always the infectious disease with an antibiotic that we can cure. There's 250,000 pharmaceuticals that are prescription drugs in the PDR, the physician's desk reference, that they have access to, with the exception of antibiotics, which are about 500. So 249,500 are prescription drugs, non-antibiotic, only treat symptoms. There's not a single pharmaceutical other than antibiotics that cures a disease. They all treat symptoms. When does a doctor make the most money? When you're sick or when you're well? When you're sick. When does the pharmaceutical industry make more money? When you're sick or when you're well? Now, the medical system has legislated themselves into a protected monopoly. Everybody but medical doctors are quacks. Everybody knows that because medical doctors tell you so. They've legislated themselves into a protected monopoly. They have no oversight by any agency. They self-police, and they have unlimited money through government and private insurance. Bam, you're dead. Now, we spend more money for health care than all the other nations in the world combined. There's 204 nations registered in the United Nations. Of those 204 nations, we spend more money for health care than all the rest. Not more than any nation, more than all nations. And what do we get for it? We rank 92nd in healthfulness in the world. There's 91 other nations whose peoples are healthier than us. We rank 60th in longevity. There's 59 other nations whose peoples live longer than us. And God forgive us, we rank 41st when it comes to live births and first month survivability of babies. And that doesn't even count the abortion piece. Time magazine, December 2008, cover article, The Sorry State of American Health. Despite technological advances in medicine, Americans are less healthy than we used to be, and the next generation, our kids are going to be worse off. How many of you have heard that our kids are not going to live as long as the adults? Okay, that's 2/3 of you. What they're saying here is statistically, 3/4 of you in this room will be standing at gravesite burying your children, unless we change what we're doing. Petitions of the doctors, petitions of the government aren't going to change anything. That's not going to change anything. There's only one way to change the system, and that is to not use it. Cut off their cash flow, suddenly now they become real humble. But you have to make that decision. Well, that takes responsibility on your part, and I'm here to teach you the things you can do for yourself to avoid using them unnecessarily. That make sense? So that's where we're going. Just so you don't think I made that up, in ranking of newborn deaths, again, we're 41st in the world when it comes to live births and first month survivability of babies. And they say it's a shame. It's not a shame, it's an absolute crime. And most OBGYNs and most pediatricians should go to jail for it. Now, doctors have become pre-grave robbers. I got a couple more of these, then you'll understand where doctors are coming from, then I'll tell you what to do for it, okay? I got a few more to show you. A couple more categories here. Medicare cost for hospice is up 70% every year. 70%, 70%, 70%. How much does it cost to stick your finger on somebody's carotid artery to see if they're dead? You don't need a lot of technology there, right? And so why would hospice go up 70% every year? Well, here's why. Doctors become pre-grave robbers. Let's say you're in a hospice. Let's say it's Grandma Daisy. Grandma Daisy's in a hospice. And she's got stage 4 colon cancer has gone to her brain. She's in a coma. She's being fed IV, and the doctor calls for a conference. The immediate family they're at the hospice, and they're all sitting, their tears coming down, looking at Grandma Daisy there. She's kind of gonzo. She's in a coma because of this cancer's gone from her colon to her brain. The doctor's saying, look, we can pull the plug. She'll be dead in 3 days. But I recommend we kind of do what we can to keep her going here, and I want you to sign a paper allowing us to resuscitate her if she has cardiac arrest, because there's this new drug coming along, and it might just help her. Of course, the instinct is to want to grasp onto that last straw, right? And, yeah, well, let's go for it. You know, we got insurance, it'll pay for it. And so everybody, especially, invariably, it's the biggest guy in the family. You know, the grandson who's 7 foot tall, tight end, you know, weighs 300 pounds and can kill you with a look, right? And he looks at the doctor and says, whatever Grandma Daisy needs, she gets, right? And the doctor, oh, yes, sir. Grandma Daisy was the best. She ironed our underwear. She made all our food from scratch, nothing ever canned or frozen. She was the best. Whatever Grandma Daisy needs, she gets. And as he's walking out the door, whatever Grandma Daisy, don't forget, she gets the best. Yeah, oh, yes, sir. Well, as soon as everybody signs a paper and they've left the room, this doctor, this hospice doctor, is on the internet calling all his golf buddies. I checked out Grandma Daisy here, and she's got $300,000 left in all her accounts between Medicare, her private insurance, and everything, and her supplements. She's got $300,000. They're there in a heartbeat. They give her a hysterectomy, double mastectomy. They'll do a double hip replacement, double knee replacement, cataract surgeries. If she has one tooth, they'll yank that, do an upper and lower dentures, and then they put implants in her middle ear because she was deaf. And then they pull the plug, say, oh, they call them, say, Grandma Daisy had a turn for the worse and she died, but only after they get the money. So what I want you to do is have hospice at home. Medicare will pay for hospice at home. Everybody comes there that needs to come there and do whatever's necessary, give her a better thing, but you have some control here. You can let her have her dog in her bed with her. You can let the grandkids sleep with her if they want. She can have a gallon of ice cream every night if she wants. You can't give Grandma Daisy ice cream in a hospice. She's dying. You can't let the grandkids come in. She's in intensive care. You can't let grandkids come in to give Grandma Daisy a hug. Do you see the difference here? Why do you want the people you love dying by themselves when the nurses are all chasing the doctors around in the library at night? After all, that's where the plush chairs are, right? Just so you know that I'm not making this stuff up, Dr. Repeat Surgery Probe gives up license. Now this guy he had 10 times the number of repeat surgeries on people than any other doctor in the state of Oregon, and it was only because he had 40 lawsuits against him that the organization did something about it. This came out on September 7th of this year. U.S. healthcare wastes $750 billion. That's $750 billion. That's $750 billion. Every year, the medical system wastes $750 billion a year. That's your tax money. Now, what was the waste for? Unneeded care in hospice. I never say anything I can't back up. This is going to make you feel warm and fuzzy. Each of you owes the Chinese government $534,000, which totals $62 trillion. Now, why is that? Well, that's because for the last 30 years, each one of your elected officials in Washington, regardless of party, independents, libertarians, Democrats, Republicans, they all did it. What they did was they took all your money from your Social Security funds, your Medicare and your Medicaid funds, and gave it over to the highway departments, which you see all this highway work going on here. That's your Social Security money. That's your Social Security money, okay? And this was so they could come back and say, I brought home the bacon last year. I got 100 new jobs in this district, and I want you to re-elect me. Oh yeah, we got 100 new jobs, we got to re-elect you. Well, when the first baby boomers came along, 80 million of them, the first wave about 4 years ago came along. Okay, we're here for our Social Security. Everybody's looking at each other in Washington. We don't have any money. They're here for their money. We don't have any money. So, well, you got to wait 6 months. Next year, you got to wait another 6 months. And so now I think you got to be 70 before you get your first payment on Social Security. It used to be 65, right? You got to keep waiting and waiting and waiting. And that's why, because there's no money there. So they run to the Chinese. We need money. Okay, we'll give you the $62 trillion. We want some security here. So what security did they have to give for $62 trillion? It wasn't a signature in their name. What it was all the weekly revenues from federal lands. Oil leases, we're talking about timber permits, grazing permits, all of the tolls from the federal toll roads. Weekly bypasses all the American banks and goes straight to China, not even keeping up with the interest, because this is a year old, it's now 70 trillion. This is outside that 16 trillion that's, you know, we're behind on our budget this year. We're behind on our budget, 16 trillion. That doesn't count this. I knew that would make you feel warm and fuzzy. Now, doctors are always at the bottom of it. This came out in 1997. A 1997 study by the Health Insurance Association of America found that 75% of insurance fraud, which is a federal crime, is committed by providers, which is a code word for doctors. You do that, you go to jail. Doctors do it, they get a walk. Okay. How many of you have heard of AARP? Okay. This is an issue of their monthly bulletin cover article, March 2012, a year and a half ago. The worst place to be in America when you're sick is an American hospital. I'll show you why they say that. I took two things out of the article so you know where they're coming from. The number of American patients who die each year from American hospital errors is the same as 4 jumbo jets crashing each week. They say there's 1,500 people. That's 3,000 every 2 weeks. It's 6,000 a month, 72,000 a year. How many of you would fly commercial airlines if you knew that they killed 72,000 passengers every year? Nobody would fly. And yet you still go to a doctor. Now you think about it. They kill 72,000 of their customers every year from just simple mistakes. Hello? They don't even get their license suspended for 3 seconds. Nobody goes to jail. They don't get a parking ticket. People say, Wallach, why are you so rough on doctors? My wife is a microsurgeon from Harvard, for God's sakes. Why am I so rough on doctors? Well, if they didn't give me the material, I couldn't do it, could I? This is not my figures. Newsweek magazine cover article. The one word that will save your life in a hospital in America is a 2-letter word that every 2-year-old knows. No! You failed 4 rounds of chemotherapy. We have this new experimental drug we want to use on you. No! How long do I have to live? Well, without this drug, you might live 2 weeks. Good, send me home. If you only have 2 weeks to live, wouldn't you rather be in your own home with your own bed, with your cat on your lap, your grandkids hugging you, you're passing on your advice to them, instead of dying in the hospital being poisoned by a bunch of money-crazed doctors? Doesn't that make better sense? If they say you only have 2 weeks to live, say, bye-bye, boys and girls, I'm going home so I can hug my grandkids. Instead of your grandkid comes to see you in the hospital and they say, honey, you can't see Grandma right now. She's busy being killed by the doctor. This is my favorite of all favorites because they list the source of all their information. This is a full-page article in the USA Today. Came out February 5th, 2007. And the information was based on the basis of the article. The title is self-evident here, Patient Protect Thyself. And they said the sources, and it came from the Institute of Medicine, the Journal of the American Medical Association, the Center for Disease Control, the federal agency that tracks all this stuff. I mean, we're talking extremely respectable stuff. The Journal of the American Medical Association is the most reputable medical journal in America, maybe even the world. Most highly respected. I mean, even if you don't like doctors, you got to admit to that, right? So that's where they got the information from. What they said was in this, it was a full-page article. I had to chop it up to get it on here. They said each year in America, yearly, American doctors kill, injure, and infect 15 million of their customers in their workplace. They kill, injure, and infect 15 million of their customers in their workplace. American doctors kill, injure, and infect more people each year in America than the mafia has in 1,000 years. You're quiet because you get it. Let's see. This one is from Wednesday, November 2012. Johnson & Johnson to pay $2.4 billion in hip implant suits. This represents 10 million hip implant patients. Why on earth would you get a hip implant? Insurance pays. As I say, the worst possible thing for human health in America was the insurance system. It causes this to be attractive to people. Your doctor says, well, you don't fit that profile. You'll be fine. Oh, okay. You die during surgery. Or you get an infection. They amputate your leg at the hip. Or the thing breaks apart in you, and they have to go back in there and deal with it. Oh, so you get $20,000. Yahoo. There's another one of my favorites because it deals with animals and people. Remember, I'm a veterinarian and a physician. This one is from the Center for Disease Control, that federal agency, again, that tracks this kind of stuff, CDC. Remember I said earlier that according to the Journal of the American Medical Association, the Center for Disease Control, each year in America, medical doctors kill, injure, and infect 15 million of their customers in their workplace. Infections in hospital. This does not include infections from private practices and group practices and all that kind of stuff. Just hospitals each year, according to the CDC, medical doctors infect 2 million people, of which 90,000 die every year. This is a yearly figure. 90,000 die from the infections inflicted upon their customers in their workplace. What would happen to Taco Bell if they were to infect and kill 90,000 customers? They wouldn't be open for 3 breaths. I mean, they would be gonzo. You think about it. You make sure you'll vote for somebody because they'll vote you in insurance that'll pay the doctor. Can anybody name me an insurance policy that prevents or cures disease? You see, insurance just pays the doctor when you screw up. Insurance doesn't protect you from disease. It just offers you up on a plate to the doctor. Oof. Well, how does that happen? How could that happen? Well, it happens because doctors wear the same white coat, the same trousers, the same pantyhose, the same shoes, room to room to room, dragging pee, poop, blood, pus, snot, slime, bacteria, virus, fungus, and yeast from room to room to room. Now, how can I say that? If I say something as outrageous as it is, you know I can always back it up. Because I spend so much time in federal court attacking the FDA, they would love to get me, so I'm always very careful, right? Yes. Okay. Well, that was March of 1998. In August of 2012, 17 years earlier, they identified one bacteria called C. diff, Clostridium difficile. It's only found in human poop. It's a human poop bacteria. Of those 90,000 people who are killed each year in hospitals, 1/3 of them, 30%, 30,000, are killed by this one bug, human poop bug. Now, what would happen if Iran or North Korea were to send over an intercontinental ballistic missile with a biological weapon in it? Hit the big population centers like LA, Chicago, Dallas, New York, Newark, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Miami. And they'd infect 2 million in these high population centers and kill 90,000. Would we send those people a Christmas card? Would we send those people chocolate to win their hearts and minds? No. Even the most ardent anti-war protester would fight you to be the one to push the button to vaporize those people because they just killed their grandma. And yet everybody wants to go to their doctor because insurance pays. Now, to show you how bad this is, in 1993, there were 85,750 of these infections from C. diff, Clostridium difficile, human poop bacteria. 17 years later, in 2010, it went up 400% to 346,800. What does that tell you? It tells you the doctors don't give a rat's tail. They don't care. There's no consequences. It went up 400%. Why should they wash your hands? There's no consequences if they don't. You know, Frank, I killed 7 people today. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We're all in the same boat. Just have another martini and relax. See you on the green. See, now, if they were doing something to stop all this, the chart should look like that, shouldn't it? But it looks like this. What was the date on this? Again, this is August 2012. This is not 100 years ago. It got so bad in 2013, it was a big article in the Wall Street Journal. It's never too awkward to ask. Have you washed your hands, Doc? Back off! You dirty pig. Get out of here. I didn't see you wash your hands. If you ever have to go to a doctor's office, carry a water gun full of urine. He comes in without washing his hands, just spray him. See how it feels, pig. That'll turn him around a little bit, wouldn't it? Now, here's one of my favorites. Since I go to Canada a lot, they get free medical care. Why do they invite me to Canada? Because just because it's free doesn't mean it's good. Now, Rita McNeil was the kind of, on record, most people didn't know what she looked like, but on record, she was kind of like the Dolly Parton. She was a country western singer, very, very well loved and famous. Her voice was just, everybody loved her, right? And she went into the Cape Breton district hospital where she lived. It's an island province, 1,000 miles east of New York. When it's noon in New York, it's 1 o'clock there. I didn't even know it, but they have a separate time zone called the Atlantic time zone. Never heard of it. It's noon in New York. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon there. So I go there 4 times a year now. I get 5,000 people at my meetings in Cape Breton. They're getting free medical care. Why do they come to see me? Because they're tired of being killed. So at any rate, this is April 2013. She goes in for some unnamed surgery, whether it was breast reduction or prolapse uterus. They didn't say what it was, back surgery, knee surgery. It didn't say. She went in for some surgery, and 3 days later she was dead from an infection with C. diff, C. difficile. Now, the hospital, the government hospital in Cape Breton, death rate, the mortality rate, was 37% above the national average. Why on earth would you go to that hospital? Because she didn't ask the Better Business Bureau. Well, tell me about them. This is a volunteer, this is an elective surgery. It's not something I had to do because I got hit by a car and I'm bleeding all over the place. It's an elective surgery. She chose poorly, didn't she? She went there, and they killed her. One of the most famous women in Canada, they killed her because some doctor didn't wash his hands after he pooped. Yum, yum. The Canadians save me all this stuff, and they give me these slides when I go there, right, so I can show it to the rest of the people. Crazy. Now, the Chinese have figured out how to solve the problem. I love the Chinese. I'm married to a Chinese. I love her. I love the Chinese. They've been around thousands and thousands of years before we even thought of, right? So here's how they have solved the problem. Now, I'm not promoting this, but the Chinese are very practical after thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Let's say a farmer goes in because he hurt his back lifting a big bale of hay or something like that. He goes into a Western hospital instead of a traditional Chinese medical guy who's going to give him acupuncture and some herbs, right? No traditional Chinese medical doctor kills anybody. They love them, right? Remember, they have 1.5 billion people. We have 300 million. They have 5 times the people we have. It costs 50 cents a month to treat each of their people. No deaths, no infections. Costs 50 cents. They've been doing it for thousands of years. 50 cents a month. Costs you $1,800 a month for insurance. Costs them 50 cents a month. Hello? So at any rate, let's say this farmer goes in and he gets his back operated on. He gets the infection, dies 3 days later, or the doctor plunges his knife too deep, goes through his disc and hits his artery, bleeds to death, and all that kind of stuff. There's all kinds of reasons why people die when they go in for surgery. He dies. Well, when all this guy's sons and brothers hear this out in the farms, they come into that hospital with their picks and axes and shovels and rakes, and they beat that doctor to death with all those sharp instruments and tools. Each year in China, in the Western-type medical hospital setting, it's 27.3 doctors are killed by family relatives of people they've killed. So 40% of the doctors in the last year have quit and gone back to farming because it's safer than being a doctor in Western hospital. Now, you got to give the Chinese credit. Now, I'm not advocating this, but I'm going to show you how to stop the problem. This will wind you up in jail. It won't really solve the problem. Because a few doctors that still practice will still practice the same way, right? So I'm going to show you how to solve the problem. I'm going to show you a few more of these, and then we'll get to the solutions. This came out in 2006. This is an annual figure. This isn't 100 years of collected information. This is a yearly figure. Deaths by medication are rising. Now, they're not talking about the side effects of the drug here. They're talking about decimal point problems where the doctor prescribed it wrong, gave the dose incorrect, or the pharmacist fulfilled it incorrectly. There's a 3-year-old kid got a strep throat. The doctor writes a true prescription for penicillin for the strep throat, and the pharmacist is distracted for some reason and fills the kid's bottle, puts the label on correctly, but fills the kid's bottle with chemotherapy tablets for a 300-pound guy. Kills a kid. Well, just tough luck. Pharmacist doesn't go to jail, doesn't have his license suspended for 3 seconds. It's just one of those bad breaks. That little god up there on Mars just looked unkindly on you because you didn't burn enough goats or something. Well, these types of mistakes and errors in the United States each year amount to 1.5 million fatalities and permanent injuries in America. 1.5 million fatalities and permanent injuries in America. Why on earth would you want drugs? Because they're free. Insurance pays. I have to pay a $2 copayment. Bam! You're dead. Here's another one for the seniors. This came out in 2010. Hospital care failed for some patients. Well, that's kind of an L. People go to the hospital and die. Results of Medicare alarming. Now it's beginning to be alarming. The study was actually done by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Office of Inspector General, which is essentially the auditor for Medicare. This is a monthly figure, and what he said was every month in America, medical doctors kill 15,000 Medicare patients over the age of 65 who go in for minor medical procedures and screening tests. Kill 5,000 of them. Now, how many would fly commercial airlines if you're over age 65 and you knew they killed 180,000 seniors every year? You wouldn't fly over age 65. See, you're out of your mind. We're going Greyhound. Or Amtrak. This is the basic problem. This is from Food Chemistry, April 2012. And Food Chemistry is a very boring but very well-respected journal. They send graduate students out to the fields and they harvest carrots and beets and corn and wheat and tomatoes and all kinds of stuff. And they run tests on them for pollution and nutrition. They publish every month. The heading is carrots, and they have all the fields. They came from what state, and they came from what county, and all the analysis. And only scientists would really appreciate the value of that. But I read it every month because I'm interested in pollution, because I've found the first case of mass die-off in America from pollution when I was doing all those autopsies for the Center for Disease Control. At any rate, April 16, 2012, they looked at 8 commercial baby foods, Similac, Enfamil, things like Gerber's, very well-respected baby foods. They said commercially available baby foods may contain less than 20% of the recommended levels of minerals and vitamins. Less than 20%. Dog food has 100%. Chicken food has 100%. Laboratory rat food has 100%. Your babies and grandbabies have less than 20%. Now, how do you make up the difference? Are you going to go to the doctor and say, hey, please, can I have permission to give my baby a supplement? Don't even waste your fuel to get there. Don't waste your telephone bill to lift up the telephone and call them. Don't embarrass yourself. The reason why it's this way is because the pediatricians who came up with these formulas had no training in nutrition. It's absolutely downright criminal. You would not tolerate this in any other industry. I want to talk briefly about birth defects. I'm going to take off my jacket because it's warming up in here, or I'm getting warmed up, one or the other. No, that's fine, thanks. I get no wrinkle stuff. I travel so much, I only get no wrinkle stuff. But at any rate, there's about 500 birth defects, congenital events. None of them are caused by genetics. There's not a single birth defect that's caused by genetic transmission, not a single one. We've learned this in the animal industry. We can prevent every birth defect you can name and 10 times that many you can by giving perfect preconception nutrition to the females. In humans, we wait until they've missed
a period or two, you know, I might be pregnant, go and get checked out. Yeah, here's some prenatal vitamins. Well, 6 weeks has already gone by. That embryo has been at risk for 6 weeks. Somebody needs to go to jail, and it's usually the OBGYN, because there's no consequences to a failed pregnancy. What if every time an OBGYN was in charge of a lady's health, female problems, and he says, okay, I'm going to be in charge of your pregnancies, and there's a baby born with a defect, there should be a penalty for him. Throw a few in jail, hang a few, guess what? I guarantee there wouldn't be any more birth defects after that. But now there's no consequences, so they don't care. How many of you have heard of babies being born deaf, congenital deafness? Very common. It's a deficiency of a single mineral, manganese. I don't know, there must be 200 studies on this back in the 50s and 60s. We know for a fact, as predictable as gravity, you can prevent congenital deafness and certain types of things that would look like cerebral palsy, called congenital ataxia, because the semicircular canals in the ears are all damaged from a lack of one mineral, manganese. Not magnesium, but manganese. There's a lot of prenatal vitamins that don't have manganese in them. Well, here's what the medical system is looking for. They're looking to decode the genes. There's 100 papers that show very clearly that this is caused by a manganese deficiency in the first few weeks of pregnancy. They're looking for the gene. Why? Because that's where the bucks are at.
How is rice milk and almond milk by comparison to soy?
Okay, it should be against the law for them to be called milk. Yeah. Because there's a lot of poor people who cause malnutrition to their kids. Oh, they're allergic to milk, so I gave them almond milk. No supplementation. The kid winds up with every disease you can think of. Because there's fat and calories and maybe a little bit of this, a little bit of that in there, but it's not the equivalent of nutrition of milk. So it should be against the law to call soy milk, almond milk, rice milk, milk. It should be rice drink, almond drink, or something like that.
Sure. But
that's one of my pet peeves.
Is soy worse than almond and rice, or can you say? Or?
Well, you can't say. It depends on where it was grown.
Okay.
It shouldn't be used as a formula replacement for babies. I'd go from cow's milk or breast milk to goat's milk. Goat's milk is actually designed for a 4-pound baby, so it's actually much better. Goat's milk is actually much better for human babies than is cow's milk, which is designed for a 40-pound baby. Our babies can't drink enough cow's milk to get enough. Where goat's milk, they can, because it's very concentrated for small babies.
Now you do have to change your diet. Now we're just changing subjects a little bit here. You have to change your diet, part of your responsibility. There's 20 of these billboards around the Beltway around Chicago. You say, why on earth would they do that? That's because 75 years ago, the average age of diagnosis of colon cancer was 60. Well, now it's 38. And so this billboard is directed to 8-year-olds. Now you talk to an 8-year-old about Grandma Daisy dying of colon cancer. Well, she was 82 years old. I'm only 8. That's a million years from now. I'm not worried about colon cancer. And so this is directed to 8-year-olds. What, Mama, what's butt cancer? Well, when I was a kid when I was a kid 73 years ago, geez, when I was a kid 73 years ago, I had processed meats with nitrates in it once a year. That was ham on Easter. Now, kids have processed meats with nitrates in it 15 times a day. They get bacon and eggs, they get ham and eggs, they get sausage and eggs, they get the all-meat breakfast with 14 different types of sausage and bacon and ham and pastrami and pepperoni and jerky, and then they get bacon bits in their salads. They have bacon burgers, and in their little Lunchables, there's these little rods made from pepperoni. They're getting all this nitrates and nitrates. And then there's fried foods. You got to give up fried foods. This guy's been dead for 35 years. He's still killing people. Now you can eat safely at these places. You can eat safely at McDonald's. You can eat safely at KFC, but you got to be very restricted on what you pick. In KFC, you can only eat the KRC, Kentucky Roasted Chicken, and their salad bar. That's it. Nothing else in there is safe. Same way with McDonald's. When I go to McDonald's, I do that 2 or 3 times a week because I'm on the road. I only eat their Angus burgers. I get the Swiss mushroom one. No mayonnaise, no bun. I have them add lettuce, pickles, tomatoes. And so I'm having a little piece of meat and I'm having a little salad with no dressing or anything on it. I do get their mild salsa, tear a little packet, put the mild salsa on there. And then I'll drink their wild berry smoothies, and I will have their parfaits, which is a little yogurt that has blueberries and strawberries in it. That's the only three things I'll eat at McDonald's. But it's very sad. Going to McDonald's as often as I do, I'll always see grandmothers and grandfathers, you know, they're like in their 70s and 80s. Here's a little kid in a high chair, 2, 3 years old, and he's, you know, smashing potatoes and doing the things that little kids do in high chairs. And here's Grandma with the chicken McNuggets, and she's always ripping the skin off the chicken McNuggets. Say, little Frankie, watch Grandma, goody goody, num 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 num, good for you. Here, and he's eating all these little skins of the chicken McNuggets. So when I do an autopsy on a kid 12 years old who dies of leukemia, I don't put cause of death as leukemia. You know, you have to have a cause of death. I always put Grandma.
Same way here. You can find a good Christian doctor who would volunteer his time to sew up these kids. You can go to the Save the Children fund and get the $250 each for the anesthesia and the suture material. But all of this is totally preventable. Rich women, poor women, middle-class women all have babies with cleft palate and cleft lip. It's a simple nutritional deficiency in the embryo when it's closing up as a tube. Now, Sarah Palin, whether you liked her politics or not, she was a sexually active woman who is over 45 years of age, very high risk of having a Down syndrome baby. Now, her OBGYN should be put in jail forever, because he should have said to her, you know, Sarah, you're going to be out on the road out there eating hotel food and rubber chickens and all this kind of stuff. You'd be taking some serious vitamins and minerals, because at your age, you're still cycling, you're sexually active, you better be taking the 90 essential nutrients. You better be taking all known essential nutrients, otherwise you're at a high risk to have a baby with Down syndrome. The OBGYN never said that. Never offered her any advice. And so, guess what happened to Sarah Palin? She had a baby born with Down syndrome. That OBGYN should go to jail. Then that would never happen again. But there's no consequences. Even for the governor of Alaska, even for the vice presidential candidate of the United States, her doctor screwed up that bad, and he didn't lose his license, didn't have his license suspended for 3 seconds, wasn't fined as much as a traffic ticket. There's no consequence. And this will happen over and over and over and over. Oh, just what bad luck. No. It's bad or lack of advice. You wouldn't tolerate that kind of service from anybody else, from any other industry. In the old days, they'd be burned at the stake. The doctor would have been burned at the stake in the old days. Cerebral palsy, totally preventable. This is an underdevelopment of the cerebellum, the part of the brain that deals with the fine motor movement. And you'll notice that people with cerebral palsy is kind of a spectrum. You get them that are barely affected, and it takes a professional neurologist to tell you that they got cerebral palsy. I mean, they might just kind of walk funny, and you think, God, that kid's already dancing. But they already have some early stage of cerebral palsy. Now, when a child is born, a normal baby, 6, 7, 8 pounds, their cerebellum is part of the brain that affects fine motor movement. It should be the size of a small tangerine. When they have cerebral palsy, that cerebellum could be the size of a plum, which is like 30% smaller. They're going to have cerebral palsy. Or they could be the size of a walnut, which is 60% smaller. They're going to have this type of cerebral palsy. Oh, he's got cerebral palsy kind of thing. And then you get this 11-year-old girl who has catastrophic cerebral palsy. The only thing she can move is her eyes. It costs $1 million a month to care for her, between all the physical therapy and the speech therapy and this therapy and feeding tubes and enemas because she can't have a bowel movement, all this stuff. Plus, you know, a $100,000 machine so she can kind of, with one finger, move herself around, run over the chickens because she can't steer it very good and all that kind of stuff. This is because the mother was missing just a few pennies worth of stuff before pregnancy. Somebody needs to go to jail here. This just goes on and on and on and on. Now, her cerebellum, you can actually look, the CAT scan, the size of a pea. Her mother had severe deficiencies for longer periods of time, so that piece went down through that 91 days and never got enough to develop. And again, for those of you who don't know the anatomy, there's a cerebellum right here. Okay? This is this piece here. That's the piece that doesn't develop when you have cerebral palsy, varying degrees of severity. Let's look at homosexuals and gay behavior. Let's look at another class of sexual problems. What about intersex? How many of you heard of intersex? Not intercourse, but intersex. What about hermaphrodites? That's another name for intersexes, hermaphrodites. They have both the male and female parts. And back before the days of the ultrasound, where they could look, now they can look at a baby at 3 or 4 months along, they can tell you the gender, or if they're a hermaphrodite. Back in the old days, they had to wait till the baby was born. What is it? Oh my God, it's both. Well, what would they do? Well, first thing they would do is take a blood smear. They'd look for bar bodies. Bar bodies show up. Whoops, that's the Russian version. Bar bodies would show up in the females. Okay, there's these little dots on the inside of the nucleus, particularly white blood cells. These little spots there, you can see the arrow pointing to them. They're called bar bodies. They don't exist in the male, XYs, but they exist in females, XX, because they represent one of the 2 X chromosomes. And so when they would, the baby's still being wiped off in the delivery room, they take the blood smear, they run in, look under the microscope, they say, okay, there's bar bodies there. Genetically, this baby's a female, which is true. So they cut the penis off, cut the testicles off, and they do a little plastic surgery to make them totally a female. Baby's 10 years old. Up here, the baby's a boy. Because there's 2 things going on when it comes to sex. One is the DNA, what you are, and then there's the preoptic hypothalamus, which covers eating drives, depression, sexual drives, and all that kind of stuff. And when you have a child that's born from a congenital event, let's call it a congenital event, if they're a homosexual or a gay male or a lesbian woman, they have about 30% of the cells that a heterosexual has in that preoptic hypothalamus. You can actually count the cells. You don't even need to know anything else. You just count the cells, and if they're below a certain level, they're going to be lesbian or gay. Because mama was missing something in the first 3 weeks of pregnancy when that part of the brain was being formed. OBGYN didn't warn her. She's out there having a great time. 1 out of 700 babies is born with sexual problems. It happened in the first 3 weeks of pregnancy. It's not a choice. It is not a choice. They're driven to be homosexual, gay, or lesbian from the time they're 3 weeks old and in pregnancy. You can't pray them well because it was determined at 3 weeks as an embryo. You understand what I'm telling you? This is based on 600 autopsies of gay and lesbian people. So, I love stuff like this. This is a brilliant move. I don't agree with most of President Obama's stuff, his policies, but this was beautiful. The Russians have a big thing against gay people. So who does he send over there for the Olympics to represent us? A gay athlete. I love it. I mean, that was a brilliant move. So these people are wonderful people, right? There's 10 times more heterosexual, what am I talking about? Heterosexuals who are pedophiles. There's 10 times more heterosexuals who are pedophiles than there are gay people. Okay? So you can't say, well, they're pedophiles. You can't do that because it's not true. Okay? So I thought this was a brilliant move. And I was up in Canada. This is a wonderful tear-jerking story. Here's 2 guys that were married for 65 years. One died at 94, the other one died at 96. 2 old uncles. They just harmless and, just were great members of the community and church members and did all kinds of things for the Rotary Club and the Lions Club and all that kind of stuff. And how can you say anything wrong with them? They're just wonderful human beings. Their mama just screwed up. Why? Because the OBGYN screwed up. Now, for those of you who don't know a lot of neuroanatomy, this is kind of a rendition of a human brain. So I can clarify this for you here. This one here, the hypothalamus, that arrow is pointing right to the preoptic hypothalamus, the part of the brain that's underdeveloped called hypoplasia, which means underdeveloped. And when it's underdeveloped, they're going to be a homosexual male or a gay male or a lesbian female. It's predictable as gravity. You can count the cells and you know. Okay. Okay, this will be the last one because you'll get the drift. This fellow here, an eye doctor, very successful eye doctor, very, you know, he's an elder in the church and all this kind of stuff, and filled in for the pastor, good Christian man, had family. He volunteered his time for the Lions Club and raised money for eyeglasses and eye surgeries and all this kind of stuff, and did the Rotary Club and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When his youngest child, I reached 18 years of age, he went to Denver and had plastic surgery and became a she. Up here, he was a she, a preoptic hypothalamus. He knew that when he was 6 years old. But down here, he was a male. He was genetically a male, but because Mama was missing something, up here, he was a female. So went and had the surgery and became a female. Had to go to federal court to be able to play tennis in a world league as a female because he had the DNA of a male. But he won in court. Kind of interesting stuff. Kind of wild stuff. Makes you think, doesn't it?
That was Renee Richard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I know the guy who paid for him, gave him a grant to go to school to become an eye doctor. He's one of my patients. He's a billionaire. He's one of my patients. Here's your first clue. I'm going to give you 3 clues, and I'm going to tell you what to do about it. Here's the first clue. This little girl here, Natalie Hayhurst from Terre Haute, Indiana, was famous. I mean, she was on Good Morning America back in 2011 because she was famous for eating light bulbs. That was her favorite snack, light bulbs. I mean, she'd unscrew them from the lamps and she'd just crunch light bulbs. Thank God there's no calories in them. Her favorite food, her favorites, she preferred wood, paper products, cardboard, sticks. She loved to eat rocks and dirt. She ate Diet Coke cans, not classic Coke cans, Diet Coke cans. She ate the magnets out of shower curtains, and she loved to eat plastic bottles and toys. That's probably why they took toys out of the Happy Meal, because of Natalie, you know. So I called her parents, because there's only so many Hayhursts in Terre Haute, Indiana. I actually true story, I tracked them down. I said, I know the cause of her doing this, and I can help you. And she said, and the mother said, you know, we're going to be on Good Morning America next week, and I'm not touching anything. Sorry, goodbye. Fame was more important than saving that kid. Well, this kid, and you kind of said it, this kid has the same problem that a pregnant woman has. Now, she's only 3 years old. The odds of her being pregnant are really low. I don't need to examine her. Although there's so many pedophiles who become pediatricians, they'd want to examine her, right, to prove that she wasn't pregnant. All right? I mean, what a perfect place for a pedophile. Become a pediatrician. What about a serial killer? What would be the best job in your life as a serial killer? A hospice. Everybody goes there to die. So you kill them an hour before they die. You get your jollies off because you got to kill them. Nurse Betty. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Okay, so she has the same disease, Pica, that a pregnant woman has. But she's not pregnant, so what is it that she has that they have? Well, the embryo steals nutrients from the mother faster than she's taking them in. And so she develops all these cravings and binge eating and weird eating. I mean, who eats pickles and ice cream? They're legendary. Who eats dog poop or Tootsie Rolls out of the kitty litter box? Pregnant women eat weird stuff. I was in Brazil in August of this year, and they have mostly Portuguese papers and magazines and everything, but they also have a few English ones. And while I was there, this story in English was in a Portuguese or a Brazilian newspaper. Okay, this lady here, 28 years old, during her pregnancy would eat 20 bath sponges a day, and even funnier, she ate 20 bath sponges every day that people take baths with, but also she ate the sand containing parrot poop from the bottom of her parrot's cage every day. Well, there's a yummy thought. I mean, this article, if I were writing the article, I'd have said poop, poopy doop. Would have been the title, right? And doctors send them to psychiatrists. They say, just steel yourself and stop eating that nasty stuff. Now here's your final clue. Anybody here ever work with horses? Okay, what do you call it when a horse chews on a fence? It's what a baby stays in. Yeah, it's cribbing. Yeah, in horses it's called cribbing. I was there on, just south of Fort Wayne, Indiana, a couple of years ago to see some kids with muscular dystrophy, which I tell you some great stories about that. And the baby buggies, or not the baby, but the horse and buggies were late. And being a veterinarian as well as a physician, this was a horse and buggy Amish farm, so I go into the barn. And I didn't even need to look at the horse or do any tests on the horse. I could tell by the cribbing on this rail inside the stall in that barn that the horse living in that stall was severely minerally deficient. Now, it's socially unacceptable for you to eat your neighbor's furniture when you go visit them. So they developed the custom when somebody comes over, particularly with little kids who would kind of chew on the legs of grandma's chair, here, have a cookie. So they wouldn't nibble on the chair. That's why they came up with a custom of giving people something to eat when you come to visit them. Cribbing in animals is munchies in people. When I bought my first clinic after graduating Naturopathic Medical School in Portland, Oregon, I bought a clinic. It was a weight loss clinic. It was a 30-year-old weight loss clinic, belonged to a DO. And, I mean, this was a flourishing, I mean, I looked at, they wouldn't show me the charts, but they did show me actually the tax returns. I mean, this guy was making more money than God. I mean, this guy was like crazy making money. So I said, okay, I'll buy the practice for what you're asking. And then he showed me all the charts when I signed all the papers and gave him his first payment. And I noticed that every month he's fulfilling the same prescription to the same person for thyroid, giving the same person the same drugs for appetite suppressant, writing prescriptions for them to go to the same gyms and everything, get it taken off, you know, insurance would pay for it and all that kind of stuff. But there's people who've been coming back there for 14, 20 years. They lose 3 pounds, they gain 5, and they lose 5 and gain 3, and you know their weight kind of stayed the same for 20 years, never really happening. But looking at the charts, it reminded me of horses that were cribbing. So I took 10 of the worst patients that had been coming to this guy for 20 years and never really lost any weight. I gave them a mineral program, and in 3 days' time, they started losing 2 pounds a day. And in 3 months' time, they lost 140 pounds each. That was in 1978. So I've helped millions of people lose weight.
Now, how many of you have a dog? Anybody in here have a dog? Okay, good. You haven't eaten them yet. Now, we've spent $100 billion over the last 60 years on dog food. We've done research on dog food for $100 billion over the last 60 years. What do we get for that? Well, we've tripled the lifespan of dogs. 60 years ago, an old dog was 8 years old. Today, an old dog is 25. Also, we've eliminated 900 different diseases in dogs that still plague humans. And all they want, all the dog food industry wants is the next time you get your next dog, you'll use that same, well, that dog food was really good, and you know, a little lucky here lived to be 25 years old, and so I'm going to get that same dog food. So that's why they spent the $100 billion to make sure you would continue to use their brand of dog food. Now, a couple of questions here. They make dog food for toy dogs under 10 pounds of body weight. If you've ever bought dog food, you know this. They have dog food for toy dogs under 20 pounds of body weight. They have dog food for medium-sized dogs, 35 to 50 pounds. They have dog food for large breeds between 50 and 100 pounds. They have dog food for giant breeds over 100 pounds. That's so every mouthful is perfect dosage-wise. By contrast, when you look at whether it's nutritional supplements or if it's cough medicine or prescription drugs, the age is 12. This is for somebody under age 12. This is for somebody over age 12. How, you know, an adult over age 12. How many have read those? It's on the over-the-counter stuff. Yeah, it's everything. Well, I know little kids that are 12 years old. They're 300 pounds. I know 80-year-old people who are 70 pounds. So you can't go by age. You got to go by weight, and that's why we're more successful in the animal industry, because we go by weight. So here comes the ultimate question. Well, there's two ultimate questions. If you were to ask your veterinarian, hey, can I give my dog the table scraps and leftovers preferentially to dog food? I mean, it's costing me $1.50 a day to feed this, you know, 80-pound dog, and my paycheck got cut in half here, and I really want to cut back. And can I give my dog table scraps? And the veterinarian would be horrified. What? We spend $100 billion perfecting dog food, eliminate 900 different diseases, triple the lifespan of your dog, and you want to feed them table scraps? I mean, the veterinarians would be mortified. No, 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 can't do it. So here comes the ultimate question, the ultimate question. How come you eat and you feed your kids, your grandkids, food you know will kill the dog?
How many remember going to your parents' house, your grandparents' house, and they had a wood stove? Okay. What did they do with the wood ash every morning? They put them in the recycling bin to save the earth. Where'd the wood ashes go? In the garden. Went in the garden. Now, wood ashes are not ashes. In the old days, everything that was burned had some kind of white or gray or brown or beige powder. They called them ashes. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust kind of stuff. But really, when you analyze those wood ashes, are really the minerals that the tree sucked up out of the ground. Now, wood ashes are all not all alike, because nutritional minerals do not occur in a uniform blanket around the crust of the earth. They occur in veins like chocolate and chocolate ripple ice cream. Some wood ashes, some plant minerals from a tree, have 3 minerals in it. Some have 10, some have 24, some have 40, some have 60. Kind of like in the Nicoyan Peninsula, in the Bolivian village, the Aymara people, like Laura, 123 years old. Dr. Lee Chung Yu, 256. They'd burn wood, take those plant minerals, a.k.a. wood ashes, throw them in the garden, then they'd eat the tomatoes and the squash and the okra and the sweet potatoes and the onions and the corn, whatever it was, and they're getting their mineral supplements through the food that they've supplemented and eating the food. They didn't get their mineral supplements through capsules, but they got them mineral supplements through the food that they supplemented with these minerals. Now here it comes. Here's the bottom line, and then we'll end it. The bottom line is this, folks. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, September 4th, 1882, it all ended. We know the exact moment because this story was in the front page. It was in the front page of every newspaper in the world. It was on the front page of every newspaper in the world. This story came out Monday, September 4th, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 1882. It all ended after thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of people supplementing with minerals through wood ashes. It all ended in one heartbeat. It ended when this guy here, Thomas Edison, pulled the switch on the first commercial electric generating plant on Pearl Street in New York City on the bluff overlooking the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge. Here comes the ultimate question. How many plant minerals, how many wood ashes are left over when you fuel your home with electricity, propane, and natural gas? 0! Nada! Zippo! Nothing! And here comes the other ultimate question. What did you replace as source of mineral supplements with that humans have done for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years? Nothing. That's why you're getting sicker, because every time you harvest a crop, it pulls a little bit of minerals out of the soil. If you're not replacing it, you harvest another crop, it keeps pulling minerals out of the soil. And after a while, you got a dust bowl because there's no more minerals left in the soil. Nothing will grow without putting some miracle grow in there or something. But that's only 3 nutrients, NPK. What about the other 87? Are we beginning to get the picture here? So this guy, unwittingly, unintended consequences, killed America, health-wise.
Okay, well, that's a good one. Let's talk about ADD, ADHD, autism. Back when I was a kid, there was no such thing as those things, right? In the year, let's see, 1980. In 1980, it was 1 out of 150,000 kids had autism. In the year 2000, it's 1 out of 150. Today, it's 1 out of 88 is the new, it just came out last week.
Wow.
1 out of 88 now has autism.
Wow.
And basically, when I was a kid, all 4 of my grandparents were from Eastern Europe. They were beet farmers and beef farmers. And so for breakfast, I would have cheese and beets and beef and eggs and...
No Cheerios?
No.
No cornflakes?
No. Not when I was a little baby, no. And we didn't have those types of diseases. Well, here comes now, 20 years later, kids are being fed on these box cereals full of processed carbohydrates with sugar on it, and they're getting apple juice.
Right.
How can you build a brain, which is 2/3 by weight, 75% by weight, is cholesterol and good fats? Okay, and so now all they're getting is carbohydrates and sugar, and they're going crazy.
Right. So not only are they deficient, but it's costing them nutrients to process all that stuff.
Exactly. So it makes the nutritional deficiencies worse.
Even worse, right?
Right. And so simply, I take kids that haven't spoken in 11 years. You start feeding them eggs, you get them on the 90 essential nutrients, which is what we feed animals, the 90 essential nutrients, 16 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 essential amino acids, 3 essential fatty acids. And after 11 years of not speaking, I have kids who can read the Bible out loud in churches.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you've ever heard of the scientific journal called Food Chemistry. It looks at the nutritional value of food grown here in the United States and food imported in the United States. Also looks for pollution, so I'm kind of familiar with that one. And in the April issue of this year, April 2012, there was a big article in there that looked at 8 very well-known, trusted names in baby foods, Gerber's, Similac, Enfamil, these kind of things. And what they said was that commercially available baby foods contain less than 20% of the recommended levels of many vitamins and minerals, and less than 20%. This is why we have autism and ADD and ADHD. It has nothing to do with vaccinations, nothing. I've looked at the batch numbers and the ingredients, and manufacturers, they send the same batch numbers and the same ingredients all over the world. And 95% of all autism occurs here in the United States. So it can't be the vaccinations because it is used everywhere else. So what is it? It's malnutrition of the brain. You cannot make a good brain on Fruity Pebbles and apple juice. Most kids who have autism and ADD and ADHD are normal until they go from formula to solid food. What's their solid food? Pop-Tarts and Welch's grape juice, Sunny Delight, and Egos with syrup. All carbohydrates, carbohydrates, carbohydrates. There's no fats, there's no proteins, there's no vitamins, there's no minerals, and you get what you get. You can't make a brain on carbohydrates only. So here's your pediatrician that should go to jail.
Healthy digestion pack if you have reflux. There is no such thing as acid reflux. Anybody who says acid reflux should be put in jail. Anybody who puts you on proton pump inhibitor should be put in jail. Why do you have reflux? Because you don't have enough stomach acid. It should be called lack of acid reflux. Because you don't have enough stomach acid. Well, there are 3 functions of stomach acid. Number 1, your capsule's intrinsic factor can't work to help you absorb B12 without you need your pH acid needs to be below 2. 1 being the most acid, 14 being the most alkaline, 7 neutral. You start getting up towards neutral, 4, 5, 6, your intrinsic factor won't work. You got to go into your doctor's office every month, get a B12 shot. Otherwise your B12 level in your blood goes down. That's because you restricted salt. Salt is raw material for your stomach chief cells to make stomach acid. Anybody who tells you restrict salt should be put in jail for the rest of their life. When they die of natural causes, their body should be fed to a rabid dog, and the rabid dog's poop fed to another rabid dog. Okay? And then the second reason why you need stomach acid is for pepsin to work. Pepsin is an enzyme your stomach makes to digest proteins down into individual amino acids. If you don't do that, you get a new allergy every month. I used to be able to eat this all my life, and now suddenly I'm allergic to it. That's because you didn't have enough stomach acid to break that protein down into an individual amino acid. And then thirdly, equally or even greater importance, the reason why you need to have an acid stomach environment below 2, pH below 2, is because it keeps your stomach sterile. Bacteria, viruses, fungus, and yeast won't grow in there with a pH under 2. Get above 3, 4, and 5, stuff grows in there. Like in vinegar, it'll grow in there. Every time you eat something, it's moist and dark and warm in there. It's kind of like Silence of the Lambs. Those moths, they just love that environment, right? It's a perfect environment for those moths. Your stomach, at a pH of 4, 5, and 6, is a perfect environment for yeast and bacteria. You eat stuff, they begin to ferment it immediately. You generate gas. You start belching and burping up the fluid in your stomach, which is not really acid. It's mildly acid, maybe a pH of 4, 5, or 6. And it tastes like vinegar. You say, oh, I got acid reflux. No, you got lack of acid reflux. So we actually have a wonderful product called Ultimate Enzymes. It's part of our healthy digestion pack. You take 1 or 2 of those, 3 to 10 minutes before each meal with a couple ounces of water. It reacidifies your stomach, solves all these problems. If you need some emergency care just in case you have something really go bad when you're out someplace, use our Ancient Legacy peppermint oil. Put 4 or 5 drops of peppermint oil into a cup of hot water. I've had people for 23 years that couldn't even talk. One pastor's wife, Pastor Hunter in Fort Wayne, Indiana, he tells this story from the pulpit, so I'm not telling it out of school. He was there because it's the oldest black church in Fort Wayne, Indiana. He's a pastor there, and he was a big, tall, 6'5" basketball player, but he had knee problems and diabetes and high blood pressure. So I was telling him what to do for himself, and his wife is sitting next to me, belching, burping, blood. He says, "Ma'am, how long have you been this uncomfortable?" I didn't want to say anything bad, so I said, "How long have you been suffering like this?" And she couldn't even answer. He says, "Oh, she's been like that for 12 years. For 12 years, background noise for him. That's the way it's been. She has to stay downstairs because she disrupts the church service and she can't sing in the choir anymore. And so, she's persona non grata in the church." And said, "Oh, have you tried Peppermint?" She goes, "Oh, oh, oh!" "Oh, yeah, the doctor told her you can't have Peppermint. It's too acid." So I had to have some with me. And I said, "Hold tight." So I go over. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning in a hotel lobby. So I pull a cup of hot water. I put 4 drops of my peppermint oil in her thing. I said, "Don't drink it. Just smell it." I'm looking at him with one eye like a chameleon, looking at her with the other one. And I'm talking to him about his arthritis and his high blood pressure and his diabetes, what to do for him, writing down what he needs. And she's smelling it and smelling it and smelling it. She couldn't resist. She took a couple of sips. I'm going to demonstrate to you what happened like in 10 seconds after she took those 2 sips. She stands bolt upright. She says, "I'm cured! I'm cured! I'm cured! I'm cured! I'm cured!" This is 1 o'clock in the morning in the lobby of this hotel. Everybody's waking up, lights are going, phones going off. What's going on in here? She's never had reflux again. She's been taking the Ultimate Daily tablets and taking her peppermint oil if she ever had kind of an episode.
Wow.
Hello? Didn't God say, "Go forth and be a salt of the earth"? Isn't that right? And doctors say, "Don't use salt." Doctors live to be 56. God lives forever. I'm going with God.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about obesity. The only thing we can brag about, being number 1 in the world, is we're the most obese nation in the world. We're number 1! Yahoo! What does that tell you about the medical theory and the government theory, what causes obesity? I mean, they've been telling us the same thing for 75 to 100 years. You eat too much, you don't exercise enough. You eat too much, you don't exercise enough. You eat too much, you don't exercise enough. Now we're the fattest nation in the world following their advice. What does it tell you about that advice? Remember Einstein? He said insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Hello? It's time to back off and say, "Doc, I don't believe you anymore. I've given you 75 years. My family's given you 75 years. We're all overweight. We're all obese. And so we're going to try something else." But instead, insurance pays. "Okay, send me to the bariatric surgery. We'll do a gastric bypass. You'll put me on this drug and this drug and this drug." Bam, you're dead. Because it didn't solve the basic problem. So what is the basic cause? I'm going to tell you what the basic... I don't care what they want to know, but you know now, and you can save yourself and the people you love. "70% of our kids, according to experts, under the age of 12 are overweight. 40% of our kids under the age of 12 are obese, 30 pounds or more of their ideal weight for their height. Has nothing to do with eating too much or lack of exercise. Nothing! That's all they talk. Oh, get thin for early in January. Eat less calories. You can only do that for so long that you start eating again, the weight comes back because you haven't dealt with the basic problem. I actually have a book called Hell's Kitchen which goes into that. I think I have a picture of it in here. But here's one of the things we've already talked about. This kid's not going to make it to 25. He's already obese. He's not even 2 years old. He's already obese. Now, these French fries are a straw man. They have nothing to do with obesity. Nothing. Now, if that kid lives to be 50, these things will be the cause of obstructive artery disease in his heart and his brain and his kidneys. But have nothing to do... Oh, thank you. Have nothing to do with being obese.
This is from May of this year, cover article in Newsweek magazine. And the first reaction of most people is to have a little giggle because he's a cute little fat kid, year-old. He's clutching his supersized bag of French fries. But this is probably the scariest slide you're going to see tonight because this is one of the reasons why your kids will not live as long as you. They're predicting already that this kid here, year-old, when I grow up, I'm going to weigh 300 pounds. Raise your hand if you know we're the #1 obese nation in the world. Anybody know that? Yeah, oh, well, good. I don't know, it's kind of interesting line there, and those people don't know. We're the #1 obese nation in the world. The only thing that we're #1 in the health industry is obesity. Now, what does that tell you about the medical systems and the government's knowledge about obesity? They know nothing! Otherwise, we'd be number 204. We should be the slimmest, trimmest, fittest people on earth. But they know nothing about the thing that makes us the sickest people on earth, obesity, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Another little piece here came out the 19th of September, just about a month ago. In 2010, 36% of Americans were obese. 2030, they're projecting that 50% will be obese. Now, what that tells you is they know nothing, because if they knew something and they could predict what's going to happen in 20 years, they should say, well, it's 36% now, but in 20 years it'll be 20%, another 20 years it'll be 5%. But instead it's going up, which means they have no earthly idea how to stop it. Some states like Mississippi, the most obese nation, or excuse me, the state in America, the most obese right now, they're going to be 66.7%, almost 67% obesity. 2/3 obesity is what they're projecting for. Same thing for Maryland, or Delaware, I guess it is Delaware, 64.7%, almost 65%. And then you're looking at South Carolina, 63%.
All right, we talked to our friend Aaron just a few minutes ago, and he's an amazing testimony to everything you talk about. He lost 100 pounds. Everybody wants to lose weight. Obesity is ridiculous.
We're the #1 obese nation in the world.
We're the starving obese. It's crazy what's out there. By 2030, they estimate 50%. Not overweight, Doc, obese. Okay, so how can we use the Mighty 90 to lose some weight, especially now with Christmas and Thanksgiving? How can folks use the Mighty 90 to lose some weight?
Well, again, pharmacist Ben, we're the #1 obese nation in the world. We spend more money for healthcare than all the nations of the world combined, yet we're the #1 obese nation in the world. What's going on here? What that tells you don't have to be too bright to stand back and say, how could we be the #1 obese nation in the world? What does it say about the level of understanding of obesity by our doctors and our government? They know nothing.
Nothing.
Otherwise, we'd be number 204, right? We'd be the thinnest people on earth and the healthiest. But we're #1 obesity because they know nothing about obesity. In their theory, you know what I'm saying? In their theory,
Yeah.
obesity is caused from lack of exercise and a disease of excess. You're eating too much.
Right.
Because they think that we're like an oven. They think if you eat carbohydrates at only 4.5
Calories
calories
in, calories out. that whole
exactly,
thing.
4.5 calories per gram as opposed to 9 calories per gram for fat. You can't buy fat. It's fat-free, low fat, no fat.
Right, but we're still fat.
We're still obese. Okay, and that's because it is not a disease of excess and it's not a disease of lack of exercise. When you're obese or even overweight, it's a disease of deficiency. You're deficient in a couple of minerals.
So obesity is actually a deficiency disease?
Yes,
Okay.
obesity deficiency is a disease of a couple of minerals.
All right.
And the symptom of the deficiency of these couple of minerals is the munchies.
Ah, so you can cure the munchies by using these?
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. So what are the minerals?
Well, I won't tell you yet. Because if I tell everybody, what I want them to do is get that book, Hell's Kitchen, and read the whole story.
Okay, so it's just a couple of minerals that will take care of the munchies.
Well, there's 2 minerals. If you have those deficient of those 2 minerals, you're going to be one of these people who weighs 600, 800, 1,200 pounds. But any mineral deficiency, not vitamin, you can be deficient in all the vitamins you want, and you won't gain weight.
Huh, it's mineral deficiency.
It's a mineral deficiency. In horses, it's called cribbing. They chew on the fence.
Right. How about Pica? Is that what Pica is?
Pica.
Pica, yeah.
And little kids will eat dirt and stuff
Lead
like that.
paint.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's because of a mineral deficiency.
Huh.
Only.
So when people have the munchies, their body is the body's wisdom is let's go get some minerals, and they're trying to find these minerals.
You're driving you to eat something to find the minerals.
Yeah.
Okay.
So using the Mighty 90 and using these minerals will take care of the munchies and take care of the weight loss.
Suddenly now, if you just get on the Alex pack, take the 90 essential nutrients,
Right.
you'll lose 10, 15, 20 pounds in a month.
We see this all the time.
Yeah, without even thinking.
Yeah.
Because suddenly now, your portions are automatically get smaller because
Yeah.
you're tired of throwing food away.
Yeah.
And you're not going to eat between meals. You'll take some snacks and think, I don't even know why I took this. I'm not even really that hungry, but out of habit, you're doing it. And it doesn't take you long to figure out I don't need to do this anymore.
So dieting isn't even hard. Once you get the nutrients that you need.
I wouldn't even use that term.
Yeah.
What I would do is talk about portion control as opposed to dieting.
Right.
Because you don't even have to think about portion control, because when the pica and the munchies goes away, portion control is just sort of self-regulating, right? Now, to speed it up, we actually have what we call the Slender FX weight management system, which has a meal replacer in it.
which is 80 calories and no sugar, so it's great for diabetics who need to lose weight. It's only 80 calories. You could have 2 of those meals a day. I like to throw in a couple of eggs and make it with water. You're only going to get like a 250 calorie meal, so 2 of those is 500 calories. You're going to have a 300 or 500 calorie meal. You're down below 1,000 calories.
And you have all your nutrients.
You have all your nutrients, right? Because you're still going to take your 90 essential nutrients. You're going to take your Alex pack, even though you've cut your calories, your portion control is way down here, but you're still taking your 90 essential nutrients, and you're going to lose weight.
We see it all the time. In fact, that's the most dramatic example of how powerful this stuff is the weight loss.
Yes.
And the weight loss shouldn't even necessarily be the target of what you're looking for. That's like
It just happens.
It just happens.
Yes.
It happens on its own.
Now, if somebody needs to lose 25, 50, 75, 100 pounds or more, then we throw in what we call ASAP. I like to add ASAP.
Yeah.
ASAP is an acronym for as slim as possible.
Right.
But I like to say ASAP because it's as slim as possible, as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Now, exactly. And so what I like to do, if you need to lose 50 pounds or less, you put 1 dropper full under your tongue of this liquid, which it's amino acids, which is the raw material for your pituitary to make certain hormones.
Like growth hormone.
No, like HC.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. And so don't tell anybody.
I won't say anything about that. It's a very important hormone. Though.
Yeah. And so instead of going and getting prescription injections,
Right.
you do this yourself.
Right.
And you're going to lose, you know, a quarter of a pound, half a pound, 2 pounds a day, depending on how you are with that portion control piece, right? And just like you said, Aaron lost 100 pounds. We have thousands of people every month.
I see it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing.
And I see it around the world. People are just, this product's going around the world now.
Yeah.
And
But they're adding years to their life. They're decreasing the likelihood of arthritis and degenerative diseases and cancer, God forbid.
Cancer,
and
heart disease.
All of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a combination of the 90 essential nutrients. The Alex pack is a combination of the super juices that's in the BTT, the Beyond Tangerine, 115 super juices, antioxidants fending off the bad guys.
Magnesium.
Well, it's all in there.
Yeah. Well, the
It's
OsteoFX Plus, we haven't even talked about that one. That's a wonderful
Well, it's
product.
part of the Alex pack.
Yeah.
It's all in there. And so at any rate, obesity goes away very quickly. But when you say, right now they're predicting 50% obesity by the year 2030, that tells you that they don't know what to do. Because if they knew what to do, they'd say, okay, right now we're 36% obesity.
But it'll be
Here's
less.
what we do.
Yeah.
And by 2030, it's going to be 20%.
They don't know what to do.
They have no earthly
Yeah.
idea because their theory has failed them.
Yeah.
And they cannot believe it's a disease of deficiency. In their little pea brains, they cannot believe that it's a disease of deficiency.
Well, they're still operating that steam engine mentality where you put the coal in and you get a fire, and they don't understand that the body's not a steam engine. There's a whole, it's a metabolic system. It's
Yes.
a chemistry system.
Okay, now, the spin-off of that, of course, they say that people who are obese, they have a higher rate of
Diabetes.
Yep. That's this sort of cousin disease here.
Right.
They run together, but not all the time. You can have people who are obese don't have diabetes, but they do tend to run together. And we've known for 70 years that diabetes, type 2 diabetes, which makes up 98% of the diabetic population, is a simple mineral deficiency disease again. It's not genetic in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
It is not genetic in any way, shape, or form, for emphasis, right?
Right.
It is a simple mineral deficiency disease. And I have to tell you this story. You'll appreciate this, pharmacist man. There's a fellow out there by the name of Jerry Murphy. He's an owner of one of the largest, I think it's the 3rd largest medical laboratory in America. He services 7,000 hospitals and tens of thousands of doctors' private offices every day with his medical laboratory. This guy's got 3
It's
PhDs.
like a diagnostic
Oh, diagnostic laboratories. Yeah, they take specimens and
Yeah.
send them to the laboratory. They send the results back to the doctor, right? I mean, this guy has 3 literally, he has 3 PhDs.
He doesn't have
in
diabetes.
medical. Oh, yeah. He had terrible brittle diabetes. I mean, his blood sugar is off the chart, even with injectable insulin.
And he
His
knows about all this stuff.
Well, he has access to the finest endocrinologists, the cutting edge of research on what you do for diabetes, all the drugs. I mean, he knows everything about diabetes the medical system knows. Well, a mutual friend introduces us. And because I've been talking about diabetes for 25, 30 years, right? And so I said, well, yes, sir, I can help you. I can get your A1C hemoglobin down below 5 within a couple of months. I can get your blood sugar down below 100 without medication. You'll be an ex-diabetic. And he looks at me like, oh, yeah, right.
Right.
He says, who are you? So I had to introduce myself a little bit. He said, well, I don't believe you. So tell you what, give me a test. I mean, give it a try. You have everything to gain, nothing to lose. You're not being successful at what you're doing. He said, okay, I'll give you 90 days, Wallach. He says, if you can get my A1C hemoglobin down from 8.9 down below 5 within 90 days. If you can get my blood sugar consistently down below 100 without medication within 90 days, I'll be your best friend.
Wow.
I'll fly around my jet plane. I will show up spontaneously at meetings you won't even know. I'll just appear and give my testimony. I will brag about you. I will put every one of my employees on your program, and I'll stop all my insurance.
And you knew you could do it. You knew you could do it.
Self-insure. Well, I've been doing it every day for 35 years. And so he said, but I'll tell you what, if you fail, if in 90 days you haven't gotten rid of my diabetes, I will hire somebody whose only job is to go around every place where you're going to give a talk and tell everybody in the newspapers, be interviewed and tell everybody what a quack you are.
Right.
I said, okay, Jerry, let's do it. Let's go for it. And he was kind of shocked that I didn't want to negotiate, right, and equivocate. Right. I said, let's do it. Well, to make a long story short, in 2 months' time, following exactly what I told him to do, and he was very good, he was impeccable in doing exactly what I told him, his A1C hemoglobin dropped from 8.9 down to 4.3, and his blood sugar went down to 62 without medication.
That's amazing. And you know what? It's the way you put it and the way you frame it, it's easy. It's easy. And I want everybody to understand this is easy. If you have diabetes, if you have a blood sugar problem, and you've been told you're going to be on insulin the rest of your life and you're going to be on drugs the rest of your life, this is easy because it's a metabolic problem. And once you change your body's chemistry, it can't help but follow. Now, that gets us to what my personal favorite product. And, you know, we all have our favorite products, but my personal favorite product is the Sweeties.
Yes.
And that's because...
That's the secret sauce.
That's the secret sauce, right? It's
for
the
type 2 diabetes.
The chromium and the vanadium. And these two minerals are so amazing for blood sugar. Real quick, if you could just tell the listeners a little bit about chromium especially, but a little bit about vanadium.
Well, these two minerals have been known, again, for 70 years to support your body's ability to metabolize carbohydrates and fats and sugars at the cellular level, support healthy blood sugar, by sensitizing your cell membranes to insulin. That's what they do. They're sort of the cofactor necessary so your cell wall can recognize insulin,
right.
so it can speak the language of insulin. People who have type 2 diabetes, contrary to what doctors tell their patients, when you have type 2 diabetes, you're making as much as 10 times more insulin than a non-diabetic.
It's resistance to the insulin.
Exactly. So the insulin level is going up because your body keeps trying,
right.
keeps pumping out more, saying, why aren't you responding? Well, that's because you're missing that key. It's kind of like the combination on a combination lock. And if you take this along with the 90 essential nutrients,
right.
by themselves you'll get okay results. But if you take those two by themselves, you'll be unhappy. Say, well, that Wallach thing didn't work. You must take them along with the 90 essential nutrients.
The B vitamins, the vitamin C. And
all 90 essential
magnesium,
nutrients.
Right.
All the amino acids, I mean everything. You cannot do it in an isolated way.
That's right.
Okay? I don't want people to get the impression they can just take those two minerals and their diabetes is going to win. No. Those are the secret sauce that goes along with the basic program, and then it will work every time.
There's actually a component in the body called the glucose tolerance factor, which chromium and I think vanadium might be part of. Are part of that glucose tolerance factor.
But then it's something your body puts together when you have those nutrients, right? Just like your bones. What's the secret sauce for bones? Well, minerals, including phosphorus and calcium
not just calcium.
Magnesium. Well, no, your bones require all 90 essential nutrients.
90 essential
exactly.
nutrients.
So if you just take calcium, you'll still get osteoporosis and fractures and arthritis.
That's such an important point. You can't say that enough. It is the entire spectrum of essential nutrients, and that's why the term the mighty 90 is so important. It's not just one nutrient. As important as chromium is, and as important as vanadium is, and as important as calcium is, it's the entire spectrum of nutrients that you need.
You cannot make an angel food cake with McCormick's liquid vanilla extract by itself.
Right. You can get an angel food crepe, as you said.
Well, you wouldn't even get a crepe with just the extract, right? But we can make a town diabetes-free in 60 days.
Isn't that amazing? Diabetes is probably one of the easiest things to reverse. And you know what's interesting is you could be a hero so fast when you get people like this guy you're talking about, Jerry. You can be a hero so fast simply by putting people on these kinds of essential nutrients. And how much death and destruction and just nightmares does something like diabetes cause in this country?
Well, next to obesity is the biggest single cost factor in medicine today. 1/3 of Americans, 30% of Americans have type 2 diabetes.
And how many pre-diabetics?
Well, that's scary, isn't it?
Right.
Another 1/3.
Right. So you're talking 2/3 of a country that spends more money than any other.
All nations combined.
Combined, right? Yeah. We spend more money than any other country in the history of the planet.
All nations combined, not any country. All nations.
Ever in history, and we are the sickest culture in the history of the planet. And something as simple as supplementing with nutrition, making sure that you're eating correctly.
Staying away from the bad things.
Staying away from the bad things can make such a huge difference. Cholesterol.
Okay.
I want to talk about cholesterol. Statin drugs, hundreds of millions of prescriptions are filled for statin drugs every year. Everybody's terrified of cholesterol. Somebody here was asking about eating eggs, and people don't want to eat eggs. They don't want to eat the yolk in eggs. And there's so much misunderstandings about cholesterol. Please tell our listeners, tell the viewers a little bit about, first of all, what cholesterol is, why it's so important, and then how you can make sure that you have enough cholesterol in your body using dietary strategies.
Well, first of all, cholesterol is an important part of our human structure. Every cell wall is like 30% cholesterol.
Right.
Okay? Every cell wall, if the trillions and trillions of cells in your body, every one of them, 30% or more, in some cases 60% of the cell wall is cholesterol.
Nerves. So you can't make cells without the stuff.
That's right. And cells won't work without it. They die without it. And then 75% of your brain weight, the white matter of your brain, the myelin, is cholesterol. Okay? If you don't have enough cholesterol, guess what you get? Alzheimer's disease. It's a physician-caused disease for lowering our cholesterol. Then you can't make sex hormones. Testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and adrenal hormones are all steroid hormones. 95% by weight is cholesterol. Vitamin D3 is
cholesterol.
7-hydroxy-25 cholesterol, right?
Right. It's cortisol, stress hormone.
Exactly. So
aldosterone.
Adrenal hormones, all these things are cholesterol. So you don't have enough cholesterol, you get erectile dysfunction, you get menopause, you get adrenal exhaustion, you get Alzheimer's disease.
All of it.
All of it.
How can this beautiful chemical, this beautiful molecule be so demonized in our culture? It's amazing to me.
Well, here's why. Because again, biologists don't know anything about chemistry, right? Doctors don't know anything about nutrition.
Right.
So that's a maxim. Well, in 1971, after having done 20,000 autopsies, I wrote a paper which compared the plugged arteries in vegans versus plugged arteries in meat eaters. Looking at this cholesterol theory, right?
So the vegans are eating what? Grains?
Well, grains, vegetables, fruits, and nuts. And guess who had the worst clogged arteries?
Vegans. Right.
Because of
There's
the
no
oils.
cholesterol in meat.
Well, there was a little bit of cholesterol in the scarring of the arteries, and that's why in their brains they thought it was a cholesterol. But there was turbulence in there, and the body's putting cholesterol in there trying to smooth it out. You know, like these nonstick pans. The body's response was to throw cholesterol at it, trying to smooth out the turbulence.
Now, when people eat meat, is there cholesterol in steak? Is there actually
Of course.
cholesterol molecule, even after it's cooked and after it's processed?
As long as you don't burn it. Okay, now, but here's the beauty of that study. 1971, 20,000 autopsies, they come out, and this is published in an international Danish pathology journal, Acta Pathologica, translated into 6 languages. This went around. Millions of doctors, millions of pathologists all over the world read this. Now, they all laughed at me because they were saying, well, Wallach must be sniffing glue because cholesterol causes heart disease. Well, guess what? Where were vegans getting their cholesterol? They're not eating meat. They're not eating eggs.
They're making it.
The oils in the grains are oxidizing because they were stored improperly.
So now...
And then they stir fry in extra, extra, extra virgin olive oil. You turn those oils into trans fatty acids and heterocyclic amines, right?
Right.
By heating them. They eat a lot of salad dressings.
So where's the cholesterol coming from?
From the body makes a little bit as a sort of, again, a
protective device?
Protective device, kind of like this nonstick pan again, right? Okay, but it came from your own body
so
making
it's upregulating the body's manufacturing system of cholesterol.
Yeah, but it's infinitesimally small. It wasn't even a factor. But they picked, that's the only strange thing that was in there, right? And so they picked that out for some reason. And they came up with these statin drugs to lower cholesterol. Well, here comes now, 41 years later, the FDA in Science News just a couple of weeks ago came out and said, uh-oh, Houston, we have a problem. They put out new warnings on statin drugs saying
diabetes.
Increases your risk of diabetes by 50%, increases your risk of Alzheimer's disease by 100%.
Now, how many of you heard of cholesterol? Raise your hand. You know, the substance cholesterol. Okay, good. Now, I'm here to tell you that there's not a single disease that's caused by elevated blood cholesterol. There's not a single disease that's caused by elevated blood cholesterol. Elevated blood cholesterol is a red warning light. How many of you have ever seen the red warning light in the dashboard of a car? Whether it turns on or not, you know there's a red warning light, right? Something's going on with the engine. Can you name me anything any mechanical or chemical or electrical thing that the red warning light inflicts upon your vehicle? No, the red warning light, as the name implies, it warns you that something bad's going on. You need to add more coolant, you need to add more oil, you may have blown a head gasket, you don't want to drive it, you want to get towed in so you can get the engine fixed. That's what the red warning light is warning you, right? Well, elevated blood cholesterol is a warning. I wrote that up in 1971. It was published, it was like translated into 6 languages in a Danish pathology journal, Acta Pathologica, and it was a big thing. And I compared clogged arteries in vegans versus meat eaters. Vegans, of course, I think you're all young enough to know vegans are people who are vegetarians who eat nothing but grains, vegetables, fruits, and nuts, no animal products, and they believe that's a healthy thing. But I don't believe it's healthy. This is a political statement because they say, okay, well, one cow eats as much food as 50 people. If we're all eat stuff like cows, and get the cow out of the cycle, we can feed 50 more people, right? I mean, that's how vegans think. Well, a cow has 4 stomachs. You can't process grass the same way a cow does. You got 50,000 little helpers in there. I mean 50,000 individual organisms, 50,000 different species of individual organisms. You've got billions and billions and billions of little organisms there that do things that you don't have the capacity to do. So you can't live on pasture grass like a cow. So being a vegan is a political statement rather than a nutritional statement, right? So what he did, when you do 20,000 plus autopsies in all these different species and 3,000 humans, 10 million slides, 10 million chemistries, you can write a lot of articles, which I did, right? One of which was comparing the amount of clogging of the coronary arteries in vegans versus meat eaters. Guess who had the worst clogged arteries? Vegans. Because of poorly stored grains, the oils in the grains oxidize and turn into trans fatty acids, free radicals, which inflame the arteries and cause them to clog. Another thing that happens with vegans, they stir fry organic vegetables in extra virgin olive oil. Turns into trans fatty acids, inflames your arteries and clogs your arteries. Somebody lives on, the meat and potatoes guy, as long as he's not burning the meat, if he's eating his meat raw, or medium rare, and having some baked potatoes, he won't get clogged arteries because there's no trans fatty acids in any of that. You're getting a picture here. So just because somebody says something's good, when you have to look at it and see if it really is. Well, again, cholesterol is not bad. If you have elevated blood cholesterol, the normal cholesterol for human beings, the normal range is 220 to 270. 220 to 270 is the normal range. And if you have a blood cholesterol without medication that's below 200, you have gluten intolerance because you can't absorb cholesterol. I've seen people with cholesterol at 60 and their doctor, man, you can eat 10 eggs a day and not worry about it. You got cholesterol 90, man, you're lucky. No, you're dying because you have gluten intolerance. You can't absorb cholesterol, which is a very big, complicated molecule. Okay? So, FDA adds new safety information to statin drugs, cholesterol-lowering drugs. February 2012. Federal health officials are adding new safety warnings about the risk of statin drugs for memory loss, Alzheimer's disease, and elevated blood sugar. If you take statin drugs to lower your cholesterol for 10 years, and at the same time you're on a cholesterol-restricted diet, you're going to increase your risk of Alzheimer's disease by 100%. In other words, you're going to get Alzheimer's disease as predictable as gravity. I'll tell you why in a minute. Also, if you're on statin drugs to lower your cholesterol and you have a cholesterol-restricted diet for 10 years, you increase your risk of type 2 diabetes by 50%. What causes elevated blood cholesterol and triglycerides is it's a red warning light for diabetes, it's a red warning light for low thyroid, it's a red warning light for deficiencies of 6 different minerals. It in itself causes nothing. I said that in 1971, and everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody, there was 25 doctors I used to hang around with, and of course they just put their arms around me and said, oh, Wallach, I mean, you must be sniffing glue. Everybody knows it's the cholesterol, man. Well, they all took their statin drugs, and guess what? They're all dead, I'm alive. God is good. Okay. Science News is kind of a summary journal for doctors. They look at thousands of scientific articles written every month, and they summarize them so doctors can read the summaries, which usually are a half a page. And if they like something, they can send somebody to get the entire article. They don't have to read thousands of articles. This came out in June of this year. Good cholesterol, not so beneficial. Higher HDL, high density lipoprotein, the good cholesterol, don't reduce heart attacks. I said that in 1971. Everybody laughed at me. Now it's published. You can go back and read it. Okay? And so it's nice to be redeemed a little bit, right? I'm going to go to each of their graves and put one of these on there.
Now this is beautiful. This came out December 17th, 2013. This was a big hoo-ha. I've been doing radio for 20 years. Up until about 4 years ago, I had 130 stations. Well, 4 years ago, I got involved with Genesis Communications Network, GCN. Now I deal with 1,300 stations, 2 hours a day. And so this message is going out. And when I read this story, that this was based on a letter to the editor by 3 doctors who looked at a couple of articles on studies that were paid for by Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. They said, vitamins are a waste. Multivitamins are useless. Well, when you look up the original study, the multivitamins only had 3 vitamins. Didn't have the 90 essential nutrients, didn't have 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 essential amino acids, 3 essential vitamins. They had 3 vitamins. And then they said, in doctors over the age of 65, it didn't help them with dementia. Well, I don't think anything can help a doctor with dementia. Because I guarantee they're all taking statin drugs. Dementia is a physician-caused disease. I'll get into that in a minute. Dementia is a physician-caused disease. Everybody with Alzheimer's disease, everybody with vascular dementia, everybody with Korsakoff syndrome and Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome was caused by a doctor. And I'll prove that to you in a second. I'll be happy to go into a federal court and guess who will prevail.
Now, thiamine is a fascinating vitamin. That's the BeriBeri vitamin.
Exactly.
That's the vitamin that they were given. Tell the story about the chickens and the rice polishings.
Well, BeriBeri is a very interesting disease. Sailors, of course, used to die from this by the thousands every year. And as they went around the world and their sea voyages were longer and longer and longer, more and more sailors, I mean, 2/3 of the crew would be dead from BeriBeri by the time they came home, particularly as time went along, because they demanded modern food. And modern food to them meant polished rice, white rice instead of brown rice, because that's what rich people ate, and so they wanted that as part of their demand. If we're going to go on this long sea voyage, we want polished rice. Okay, and 2/3 of the crew would die from BeriBeri. Well, first of all, they get a dementia called Korsakoff syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Which is caused by a thiamine deficiency. Yeah. And then they would get congestive heart failure.
It's like a cure for Korsakoff syndrome is thiamine.
I cure people in a week.
Yeah, yeah. That's amazing, right?
But I give them 26,000 times the minimum daily requirement. I hedge my bet, right? Okay, so at any rate, all these diseases that these Japanese naval surgeons were really the first ones to recognize there's some problem here when they fed these sailors this polished rice. But the Admiralty, you know, the big guys up there, the Admiralty, well, listen, these guys are demanding this. This has nothing to do with it. It's got to be some bug. They thought it was a bug.
Wow. What year are we talking here?
We're talking about the late 1700s.
Wow.
Okay, in the 18th century. And Europeans get the credit for discovering it, but it was really these Japanese naval surgeons.
It was a Polish chemist.
Kaiser Funk.
Yeah.
Yeah, was his name, yeah. But, well, he actually identified it. But before that, the Japanese naval surgeons...
They knew there was something in there.
They knew there was something in the bran of the rice, in the brown covering, the hull on the rice could prevent and reverse that disease. And they would all die of congestive heart failure, but they would all go crazy. They'd lose their minds, Korsakoff syndrome, before they died of congestive heart failure.
Alcohol, people who drink alcohol, that deactivates thiamine somehow.
Well, sure. Well, alcohol is a liquid sugar, and it makes it...
Thiamine's used for metabolizing the alcohol.
And so when you take in sugar or alcohol, it makes a deficiency worse.
Here's another one that disturbs me. Each year in America, non-contact injuries to kids. In other words, they're just running down the field and they crumple because they tear a ligament, they tear a cartilage or a hamstring or something like that. It's not an impact thing. This is just a one-man accident, right? They're just running down the field, cutting here and there, and they tear something. We're talking about 1.35, 1,350,000 per year in America between the ages of 6 and 19. Somebody needs to go to jail here. Where's all these sports medicine doctors? Where's these personal trainers? Where's the coaches? Where's everybody who's supposed to be taking care of these kids? They're giving them Gatorade. Well, Gatorade has 2 nutrients in it. Our sports drink, called Rebound, has 100. Let's see. If you're sweating out 65, 70 nutrients, how much good is 2 going to do you? What about 6? Powerade has 6. Gatorade has 2. Our Rebound, thank you, sir. And we have it in cans. We have it in these canisters. We have it in sticks. Tear them open, put them in a glass of water or a bottle of water. This has 100 nutrients in it. It was designed for professional sports. We actually have many professional sports teams, basketball, football, hockey teams use this stuff. These are the sticks. They come 30 in a box. Thank you, sir. And, you know, this is good when you're doing whole big canisters for teams and things. Just throw it in there. It's just really cool. It has selenium in it. Nobody's going to die of a sudden heart death when they take Rebound. Are you getting a picture here? We built these things to take care of your kids, your grandkids. Don't let your kids and grandkids die unnecessarily because the sports medicine doctor and the personal trainers and the coaches have failed you. But they're the professionals. That doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. They've proven that. Each year in America, almost 400,000 kids in football, almost 400,000 kids in basketball, 172,000 in soccer, 119,000 in baseball, softball is 58,000, volleyball is 43,000, wrestling is 40,000. That was my sport. Cheerleading, 37,000, almost 38,000. Gymnastics is only 28,000, and track and field is 24,000, almost 25,000. You're just running down the track, boom, your hamstring goes. Because you don't have enough raw material to maintain it. Kind of like driving a car, a NASCAR, 200 miles an hour without any oil in it. You could expect something catastrophic is going to happen before the 500 miles is up. Are you getting a picture here? I think you are because you're very quiet. That means you see what's going on here. So, let's look at professional athletes. I mean, we pay them millions of dollars an event. We're talking about the top guys. They get $2, $3 million, $5 million an event. They only play for like 3 months. The rest of the year, they're home smoking cigars, having a grand old time, traveling around the world. So, why do we have problems like this? Because they're drinking Gatorade with 2 nutrients, Powerade with 6, water with none. If you have somebody in your home who's in the Pee Wee League, Pop Warner League, who just exercise because they want to stay fit because their doctor told them to and they think it's good, you better be giving them Rebound, get them on the 90 essential nutrients, and then you won't lose them. They won't become disabled. They won't get in trouble physically. But you have to be obsessive about this. Ask my wife, I'm crazy obsessive about this. Our whole kitchen is all my bottles of stuff every day. I take my liquids twice a day. I take 75 tablets, pills, and capsules twice a day. I don't expect everybody to do that. But I can't get sick. I'm going on 75 years old. I haven't been sick in 66 years. I have never been on a prescription medication. You can't find a 75-year-old who's never been on a prescription medication. You and me, babe. Even as a kid?
You've never taken a prescription?
Even as a kid, you never had any penicillin or anything? No. Okay, good girl. How old are you now? Come on, for science. Not going to give. Okay. 39. There you go. Now, listen, well, she's not, what's the guy's name? Jack Benny? She's not Jack Benny. Come on, 39 years old. Okay. At any rate, these guys drink water, Gatorade, Powerade. They're running down the court and they just fall apart. This isn't from an impact with another player. Okay, look at this guy's got, I mean, he's got all these bandages and ace bandages, all this stuff all over his legs. These guy's a mess. When you look at the average lifespan of professional athletes, depending on, the average lifespan when you take all professional sports combined is 62. Now, these guys are paid to exercise. These guys are paid to be healthful. These guys are paid to exercise. They're paid to eat right, to supplement right, sleep right, do everything right, stay away from the bad stuff. And you think if anybody could live to be 100 to be professional athletes, they're getting paid to do everything perfect. Average lifespan is 62. Except for football players, their average lifespan is 51.
Yeah, 50. I was going to say 50.
51, yeah. There's a big study. It was done in 2011 when they were looking at changing blocking and tackling rules and changing how helmets were made for head and neck injuries, neck concussions, all that kind of stuff. Totally unnecessary. Here's the one. There's a Canadian newspaper, and they were doing a study with Canadian football players and the U.S. NFL players. And to make a long story short, the sports medicine doctors were shocked when they were collecting the information for the study. They said, well, we can't believe this. These guys are, average lifespan is 55 years of age. It doesn't even make 62 like when you're the total of athletes. And so the insurance companies went crazy. They said, wait a minute. We're losing money on these guys big time when it comes to life insurance. So they got their actuaries, their numbers crunchers to look at this, and the actuaries said, that's not a correct number. 55 is not a correct number. The average lifespan of professional football players is 51. They had to triple their life insurance premiums. So instead of $300 a month, it was $900 a month. Of course, if you're making $1 million a game, it doesn't matter, right? So here's Theo Ratliff. He's been with us for 14 years. When he was 28 years old, he had bone-to-bone arthritis in both knees. Cartilage popped off his right hip, had to be surgically reimplanted. It was kind of barely hanging on. They surgically replanted on. He caught a pass during a regulation game, broke his wrist, and the orthopedic surgeons for the Atlanta Hawks said, look, this guy's too fragile to play professional basketball. We're not going to sign off on him, so they killed his contract. He was actually in his locker, clearing out his locker, and you heard one of our guys, Mike Glenn, who had been a player, this guy was an all-star. His nickname was the Stinger. A lot of his jump shot records still are in play. And he was talking to another player about this, and so Theo said, will that stuff help my joints? He said, yeah, even yours, Theo. So he got in contact, and I put him on. This guy is 6'11", and he looks skinny, but he's 6'11", so he weighs 300 pounds. So he had to take 3 of the healthy bone and joint packs per month. And we invented the Rebound for him. 90 days later, we had completely rebuilt him. He passed all his physicals, and he played for 14 more years, and made $140 million he was not going to make if he listened to the orthopedic surgeons. Now, do you think his wife, Christina, loves me? She loves me. She loves me. She's 6 foot tall. No, actually, she's 6'5". So every time I go there, she makes me a 3-inch thick T-bone steak, because she knows I love steaks. Remember, she gets the top chef in Atlanta to fix it for me. And she just stands there while I'm eating and pats me on the head, and she just loves me.
So tell us a little bit about selenium, this incredible, incredible mineral, and some of the things that you can use it for. And I want you to place special attention on how selenium is involved with the thyroid, how selenium is involved with diabetes, and all the different things that you can use with this incredible mineral that, by the way, is active in microgram quantities, the tiniest of quantities. Maybe touch on that a little bit.
Okay, as you say, selenium is one of those wonderful trace minerals, which is an essential nutrient. We need it. We can't live without it. And it has many functions. It's a structural mineral when it comes to chromosomes, right? Epigenetics, we'll get into that, right? But it's a structural piece in the actual normal double helix.
Is it one of the fingers that you were talking about?
It's one of the metallic fingers that keeps this double helix of the chromosome in the proper distance of each other. There's a little strut there. In the middle of these struts, there's all these different minerals, and selenium is one of them.
Wow. So the helix itself is an incredibly organized structure, and every little component of it is key. The distance that the nucleotides are from each other, all of that is tightly regulated, and minerals like selenium are involved in making sure that this structure stays intact. That's what the fingers are.
Exactly. And when you have a deficiency of selenium, many things happen. In the biochemical level, you can't recycle glutathione, which is one of the most potent antioxidants made by the body.
The most, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And it's used to protect you from cancer and fend off inflammation in your arteries so you don't get clogged arteries and that kind of stuff. But if you don't have enough selenium, you use one molecule of glutathione and it sort of deactivates. But when you have selenium, you can recycle that one molecule of glutathione 1,000 times.
That's awesome.
That's very awesome. And then it protects your brain from MS. When you have MS, you have a terrible, terrible selenium deficiency because it allows the free radical damage to the myelin, the white matter of the brain again, and you get these lesions in the brain about the size of a lima bean that cause MS.
So supplementing with selenium
can prevent or reverse MS.
Wow.
Along with the 90 essential nutrients. It can't not by itself.
That's right. So 200 micrograms to 400 micrograms? What do you
well, I like to be a little heavy-handed.
600?
I like to be a little heavy-handed.
800?
A milligram, yeah.
A milligram of
1,000 micrograms. Yeah.
Okay.
When you have these diseases, you need to use a bigger hammer, right?
Okay.
HIV. You can prevent HIV from mutating to AIDS by supplementing with selenium.
Wow.
1 milligram a day. What's the difference between Arthur Ashe, the great black tennis player, and Magic Johnson, the great black basketball player? One is dead, one's alive. One's supplementing with selenium, one didn't.
Is that what, that's what Magic Johnson's doing? Oh, that's interesting.
Now,
how about just even just a common cold or just like flus and that kind of thing?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there. That's very good. You're on top of it.
All right.
But I also, it's one of the things that's, they actually discovered, Dr. Gerhard Strauser, a grand man, he's the guy who discovered that selenium is an essential nutrient back in 1957.
They didn't consider it essential back then.
No, they considered it poison.
Yeah,
exactly.
right,
They thought it was a poison. Even medical doctors today still think it's a poison.
Yeah.
But it actually was discovered to be an essential nutrient. And the disease he was looking at was liver necrosis, the death of your liver. If you survived death of your liver, you got cirrhosis of the liver, right? And this is all caused by not drinking, because 99% of the people who get liver cirrhosis never took a drink of alcohol in their life.
Right.
It's a selenium deficiency.
Wow.
I get people off the liver transplant list all the time.
Wow, wow.
Some
And that's
of
a big problem today, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. That's a huge problem.
Fatty liver,
Yeah.
primary sclerosing cholangitis, liver cirrhosis.
Yeah.
I've had people, pharmacists, Ben, who've had 32 liver operations at Harvard Medical School. Their livers are the size of an Oreo cookie, and I rebuild them in 2 months to a normal liver, just using the 90 essential nutrients and extra selenium.
Right.
Okay. And then there's cataracts are caused by selenium deficiency and free radical damage, eating fried foods, free radical damage to the lens of the eye and no selenium to protect it. And then you get cardiomyopathy heart disease. I've done
Keyshawn syndrome.
Keyshawn syndrome,
That's
yeah.
right.
I've done 1,200 autopsies on kids under the age of 10 in Keyshawn Province, China. 1,200 autopsies. Nobody else has ever done that.
They're all deficient.
They're all deficient in selenium. And partially because of our work there in China, every school kid, when you go to kindergarten, they get a multiple and a capsule of selenium. We've wiped out cardiomyopathy heart disease in children in China.
That's awesome.
Is that awesome?
That's awesome. Now, isn't there an animal correlate to this Keyshawn syndrome,
Yes.
selenium deficiency?
Yes.
Is sheep?
Well, in every animal you can name, there's a correlation. But in pigs, they call it mulberry heart disease. In sheep, they call it stiff lamb disease, because when they get heart disease, they kind of walk with arch back, and they're kind of stiff. And in cattle, they call it white muscle disease, because when you cut through the heart, instead of having this beautiful kind of reddish purple heart color, it looks like a good perch muscle. It's white, so they call it white muscle disease. And you can prevent it with
A little bit of selenium.
Well, with the 90 essential nutrients plus extra selenium. If they get it and they survive the first heart attack, or you catch it with just arrhythmias in their heart, you give them the selenium, it goes away.
How about for the thyroid?
The thyroid gland, of course, there's actually a syndrome called Wilson syndrome. The question is, how many nutrients does your thyroid require?
A lot, probably. No?
All 90.
Yeah.
Now, if you ask a physician, they'll say iodine,
right.
because it's part of the structure
Right.
of the
Thyroid
thyroxine hormone. But that's only the part of the structure. But for the thyroid gland to work, it needs all 90.
Of course.
Duh, right? And so a lot of times when they look at the T3, T4, the TSH, and all that kind of stuff, really what they're looking for is iodine levels. And so you can be perfect. They say, well, we don't know why you're having all these symptoms of thyroid disease, because, yeah, we give them iodine and nothing changes. Well, that's because it's a selenium deficiency.
That's interesting. Well, selenium is involved in the hormone as well.
Well,
it's part of the structure as well,
it's
no?
part of the structure, but it actually is, even equally importantly, it's part of the process of making the hormone, okay? And as is copper and everything else. And then, of course, it's necessary for the health of your muscles. Muscular dystrophy is a selenium deficiency.
Wow.
Now, a fellow by the name of Marvin Rappanay, who grew up Amish, and he went in and became a Navy SEAL. Going from the Amish world to Navy SEAL, he comes back after 20 years in the SEALs. He goes back, a worldly man now, and he sees all these kids dying of muscular dystrophy in the Amish community. And so I go there and I say, well, this is what we see in calves that have muscular dystrophy or white muscle disease. And it's a selenium deficiency. So we went to Purdue University, and sure enough, in Indiana, wherever these kids are that have muscular dystrophy, there's always a selenium deficiency in the soil. So we started giving them the 90 essential nutrients, giving them extra selenium, and the muscular dystrophy goes away in a couple of weeks. Even if they've been in wheelchairs for years, we get them out of the wheelchairs to go play basketball. So we send all this information to Jerry Lewis. This is a gospel true story now. We send all this information to Jerry Lewis.
He must
5
have
years.
loved it.
He went crazy, positive. He loves it.
Yeah.
I said, now, Jerry, we're not asking for money. We already know the cause, prevention, and cure of muscular dystrophy in kids.
We already know this. And we just think it's appropriate that we offer to you the opportunity to make the news release, because you're the
Mr.
guy.
Muscular Dystrophy.
They're Jerry's kids,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So you're the obvious guy to make the news release if you want to. If you say no, we'll be happy, but at least my conscience is okay because I've given you the opportunity. He gets excited. He takes it to the medical committee in the Muscular
not
Dystrophy
so
Foundation.
excited?
They fire Jerry Lewis. That's why Jerry Lewis has not been on the telethon for the last 2 years.
Oh, that's an amazing story.
And they sent him on a cruise. They actually bought him a ticket to say, we have a non-disclosure contract with you, Jerry. You can lose everything. We'll sue you for everything if you bring this up. And so we're sending you on a cruise. Go enjoy yourself.
And don't bring it up
We want you away from here when we're having this telethon this year, because everybody's going to say, well, where's Jerry? For the last
cruise.
It's over with.
That's a great story.
And so they fired Jerry Lewis because we discovered the cause, prevention, and cure of, and I knew what it was for a long time, but until Marvin Ropp came back from being a Navy SEAL and introduced me to the Amish community, I didn't have access to those kids.
So selenium for muscular dystrophy. But I think your point's well taken that you have to have the entire mighty 90. These things are specific for disease states, but the entire milieu of the body has to be nutriated.
That's right, because everything kind of works together.
Yeah.
And if you have to have the metabolism to be able to repair yourself. You have to have the metabolism to operate just in life. And so to think you can cherry pick one nutrient, this is one of the bad things the medical system does.
Allopathic nutrition, I call it.
Yes.
Where you just use a nutrient like it's one kind of drug, one kind of disease.
Exactly, using a nutrient as a drug.
Yeah.
Instead of using the whole. I liken it to Grandma's recipe for an angel food cake, for instance. And she dies and she leaves her secret recipe to her favorite granddaughter, right? But the granddaughter doesn't like some of the ingredients. She said, I really don't like eggs because of cholesterol theory, right?
It's not going to be the same cake.
And so you leave the eggs out, and all you get is a angel food crepe.
Yeah.
You don't get angel food cake.
Right. Because all the ingredients work together.
Exactly.
And the mighty 90 works together the same way.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to talk muscular dystrophy. How many of you heard of muscular dystrophy? Have you heard of Jerry Lewis telethon? Well, Jerry Lewis hasn't done the telethon for the last 3 years because of me. It was an unintended consequence. We gave him 5 years of studies on muscular dystrophy kids that we're curing. Reverse all their genetic markers. Again, when they're 3 years old, a couple of weeks, they can lay there like a worm. In 2-3 weeks, they're up playing soccer. All their genetic markers, their blood tests, everything's normal. Biopsies are normal. We gave all this, we gave a pile like this to Jerry Lewis on, I don't know, maybe 100 cases. Their doctors called them cured, not me. We don't know why, but they don't have it anymore on their charts. So we gave them copies of that. We gave them email copies, hard copies, and say, Jerry, we don't want any money from the Muscular Dystrophy Foundation. We don't need to do any research. We already know the cure. We know the cause, prevention, and cure of muscular dystrophy. All we want to know is, these are Jerry's kids. Do you want to be the one to make the announcement that, thank God, the cure has been found? Finally. Would you like to be the one to make it? He says, well, yeah. And so he takes all this to the medical committee of the Muscular Dystrophy Foundation. He said, look, this guy Wallach has sent these in. I don't know much about this, but I read it, and it looks like they're negative now. They were positive before. They said, Wallach, and they looked me up, and they said, well, he's the guy that said cystic fibrosis in 1978 could be prevented, cured, not genetic. This guy's a nut. We're not going to even waste our time reading his material. And Jerry Lewis said, quote, you know, I've helped you guys for 22 years. I've helped you raise over $1 billion in 22 years. I've never asked for anything for myself. He said, I really would like you to read this stuff, and you tell me then that it's useless, then I'll feel at least we've done our best and we've looked at it, and maybe his claims are nuts, but at least we didn't miss a chance to examine every stone, right? We look under every stone. But if you tell me you're not going to even look at it, I'm really going to be offended here. And they fired Jerry Lewis. They fired Jerry Lewis!
Wow.
That's why he hasn't done the telethon. He hasn't spoken about it because he has a contract with them, non-disclosure, can't work with anybody else for 10 years after they part, all that kind of stuff. So we're having our first telethon in February. Nonprofit organization that already existed called Defying Muscular Dystrophy, Defying Muscular Dystrophy, D-E-F-Y-I-N-G, Defying Muscular Dystrophy, Defying MD is another way, .com. And this organization has already, we chose to be associated with them because they have but they're nonprofit status, but they already have an FDA-approved study that they did and published. So we know, and so we say, okay, our goal is to raise $10 million. What we're going to do, we're not going to take any of it. All the costs and everything involved, we're going to cover ourselves. We're not going to take 100% of it's going to the kids. What we're going to do is take these families that have out of their own pocket, bought all the supplements, did the diets just exactly as we said, gave us the records. We're going to reimburse them for their expenditure for their supplements for the 1 year. That's what we're going to do with the money. If we only get $100,000, we'll equal it up and divide it up. But our goal is $10 million, which will then give everybody their money back that are involved. We're not going to take a single penny from it. And so this telethon, you want to watch for it. It's coming out February 21st and 22nd. And if you're thinking about donating anything this year, go look on defyingmusculardystrophy.com. Go look at it. Because they have films every 2 weeks of all these kids that have started the program. And you can see their progress. Kids that couldn't even raise their arms are now riding tricycles and ringing the bells, and it's just amazing. Every 2 weeks they have another film of these people. And so if you have in your hearts to give a little donation, I don't care if it's $10, anything. It'd be very sweet. Okay, this organization was started by this guy here, Todd Harrison, just turned 25 a week ago. This picture was taken a year ago, and he's been on our program for over a year. And here's a guy who's been in a wheelchair for 8 years, and now you couldn't tell there's anything wrong with it. Just look at his films every 2 weeks. Okay, so it goes back again. Why isn't Jerry Lewis doing the telethon? Because they fired him. They don't care about the kids either. They didn't want their income stream interrupted. They're taking 80% of it anyway for administrative cost. Shame on them. Shame on them. Absolutely criminal. The age group that has the fastest growing rate of MS, multiple sclerosis, are kids under the age of 12. They're now diagnosing MS in kids under the age of 2, 16 months, 18 months. Historically, it was a disease of 35 to 50-year-olds, middle-aged people. What's going on here? Well, this is free radical damage to the myelin, the insulation material in the brain. And after school, grandma takes the 6-year-old or the 10-year-old to one of these fast food places and gets them a shake. It's not a milkshake, it's made out of oil. It's, one of these soft serve shakes. It's oil, free radical damage. It oxidizes, turns into trans fatty acids, and screws up their brains. So now grandma is the one who's inflicting, out of ignorance, she's inflicting MS on these little kids because of free radical damage to their brains. Here's a NASCAR driver. He and his 3 brothers and sisters all have MS. It's not genetic. But his mother made sure they all had salads and put olive oil in everything. Olive oil, coconut oil, trans fatty acids, free radicals, bam, you have MS. The whole family's got it because Mama insisted they eat salads and make sure they put lots of vinegar and oil on their salads. But my doctor said that was healthy. Well, your doctor only lives to be 56. Why would you believe him? U.S. News World Report, February 2005, special health issue. Rated America's most credible print news source. Special health, who needs doctors? Your future physician might not be a medical doctor. You may be better off. I guarantee that every medical doctor in America canceled their subscription to U.S. News World Report. Every hospital, every clinic, every pharmacy, everybody who dealt with doctors canceled that. At least it wasn't going to be out there in the waiting room. Now, why did they do that? Well, this was an apology to the American public. This whole issue is an apology to the medical public. Because during the 1990s, some of you are old enough to remember the battle between doctors and the HMOs. I'm the doctor. I'm the one that's supposed to determine what drugs you get, what treatment you get, whether you get surgery or not for your illness. Do you want an accountant from an HMO determining what you're going to get? And your answer should have been, yep. Because the accountant, the only way the HMO was going to make a profit was to cure you in 3 weeks. Then he'd take your $100 every month for the rest of your life. But everybody went with the doctors, including them. And once they realized, they looked at everything I just showed you earlier, they said, uh-oh, we bet on the wrong horse. And so this was their apology to the general public. Remember I told you that my survey of 200 obituaries, in I don't know, about a 5-year period, all from the Journal of the American Medical Association, was 58. Well, doctors didn't like that, so they ran their own. They said, well, Wallach lied. The average general practitioner, family practitioner, and primary care physician doesn't die at 58 like he says. We die at 56. They were so eager to show that my results were imperfect that they didn't care. They showed that they died 2 years earlier than I said. So I always do apologize for giving them too many years. Yeah, this was published in 1999 in every medical journal in America. I don't know about the rest of the world, but in America this appeared in 1999. Okay. Now this is beautiful. This came out December 17th, 2013. This was a big hoo-ha. I've been doing radio for 20 years. Up until about 4 years ago, I had I think it was about 130 stations. Well, 4 years ago, I got involved with Genesis Communications Network, GCN. Now I deal with 1,300 stations, 2 hours a day. And so this message is going out. And when I read this story, that this was based on a letter to the editor by 3 doctors who looked at a couple of articles on studies that were paid for by Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. They said, vitamins are a waste. Multivitamins are useless. Well, when you look up the original study, the multivitamins only had 3 vitamins. Didn't have the 90 essential nutrients, didn't have 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 essential amino acids, 3 essential vitamins. They had 3 vitamins. And then they said, in doctors over the age of 65, it didn't help them with dementia. Well, I don't think anything can help a doctor with dementia. Because I guarantee they're all taking statin drugs. Dementia is a physician-caused disease. I'll get into that in a minute. Dementia is a physician-caused disease. Everybody with Alzheimer's disease, everybody with vascular dementia, everybody with Korsakoff syndrome and Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome was caused by a doctor. And I'll prove that to you in a second. I'll be happy to go into a federal court and guess who will prevail. Okay? So this is the kind of crap that goes on. Now, why is this happening? Well, if you look at what's going on in the stock market, all these big pharmaceutical companies are buying up vitamin mineral companies like crazy. They're just buying them up like crazy. Because why would they want you to cure yourself with vitamins and minerals? Because you'll stop using pharmaceuticals. So they're buying up all these companies, and they would, if I were to sell my company to them, which I'm not going to do, of course, but if I were to do that, they would take, see, to prevent you from having congestive heart failure, or if you have congestive heart failure for 3 years, you've been on the heart transplant list, I'll get you off medication in 5 days. I won't take you off. Your own doctor will take you off. The quickest this happens is 5 days. Sometimes it takes 3 months, but usually 5 days to 3 months, you'll be off your medication for congestive heart failure because it's a deficiency of a single vitamin. It was discovered by a Japanese naval surgeon in the late 1700s. But why would a doctor want to cure you for $300 in office calls when he can get $750,000 for a heart transplant? There's no law requiring him to cure you when there's a cure available. Remember? There's a self-policing monopoly. And they've killed off all their competition, so nobody can offer you a cheaper, more effective, safer option. Are you beginning to get a picture here?
So what's the deficiency?
Thiamine deficiency is BeriBeri. Congestive heart failure is a simple vitamin B1 deficiency. So our program for congestive heart failure gives you 28,000 times the minimum daily requirement. 5 days' time, you're off all your digitalis, your water pills. Your cardiologist and heart transplant surgeon will throw up their hands and take you off all of everything. Take your bracelet away from you that'll light up, you know, when they have your heart. I do this all the time. People say, well, Wallach, you can't do that. It's genetic. Crapola. It's a simple vitamin deficiency. Cardiomyopathy heart disease is a simple mineral deficiency, a deficiency of selenium. Somebody needs to go to jail here. In any other industry, I mean, you think about it. Bernie Madoff defrauded his investors by $3 billion, and he went to jail for life. Doctors defraud you every year in America of $3 trillion, not $3 billion, $3 trillion, and you love your doctor, you send them Christmas cards. Because insurance pays. So I'm going to show you here how to solve the problem. I don't want you to kill them. I want you to stop using them. This is one of my last favorites here on doctors, and we'll get into the diseases. I'm going to show you how to prevent and reverse them. Nutrition. Now remember, I haven't been to a doctor in 66 years of me being the patient. I've autopsied a few. They decompose like everybody else. I've never been on a prescription drug. I haven't been sick in 66 years. I don't have any ailments. I do not have any ailments. I don't have any problems. I have political problems, but not physical and physiological or disease problems. So, what if everybody in America were like me medically? The medical system would be real humble, wouldn't they? You go to your doctor only once every 75 years? 95% of all doctors would retire and go into some other industry. You understand what I'm saying? If you take care of yourself, you'll go to see your doctor once every 75 years and you won't need them. I'm glad there's a few physicians in here of various kinds because we're recruiting them. They're lining up to join me because they see the writing on the wall. I see 1 million patients an hour. While I'm here having fun with you guys, I'm seeing 1 million patients. Well, how am I doing that? Because I have 1 million PAs. How many PAs do you have? How many PAs do you have? I have 1 million PAs. Okay, I have 1 million PAs. And each of them sees thousands of people a day because each of them has thousands of PAs. You understand what I'm saying? And I have cookie cutter recipes. They're all Betty Crocker recipes in these books. They're all Betty Crocker recipes. You just follow what the recipe says. The cake comes out the same every time. Start inventing your own stuff, I'd take your permit to work with me away. That make sense? Okay. New York Times. Now, my wife loved this guy. This guy was a cardiologist. He's a cardiologist. He was a top soccer player in Brazil. He was their Olympic star. This guy, he kicked all his goals backwards with his heels, so his nickname was Heel of Gold. He'd get in position, he would kick the goals backwards. So I don't know why he came up with that, but he kicked all his goals with his heels, so they called him the Heel of Gold. His nickname was Socrates. Nobody even knows his real name because all the soccer players in Brazil take on a persona nickname kind of thing. So his name was Socrates. So you knew he was probably a physician. He was a cardiologist. And he drops dead playing senior soccer at 57 years old of a heart attack. My wife said, "Oh, he's so handsome." Yes, honey, but he's dead. That's probably, he's too beautiful. He should have been a girl. He's so beautiful. Now, here's my favorite obituary. I love this obituary. This is a great story. It tells everything. This guy here is the oldest man in America when he died at 112 in December of 2008. Died at 112, George Francis. And George Francis lived through 19 U.S. presidents, whose average lifespan is 75 if you take out JFK. Okay. And presidents have at least one college or university degree. Most of them, if they're lawyers, will have 2 or 3. They're cared for by medical doctors who have 2, basically 2. They're pre-med and they're medical degrees. Some of them will have, if they have specialties, they might have a 3rd degree or a 4th degree. If they go to jail, they might have the 5th degree. But the doctors who take care of these presidents are not country bumpkin doctors. These are the best of the best, right? And they lived to be 56, exactly half of George's age. I mean, I couldn't have paid for this. What makes this story so interesting is George was an illiterate black fellow living out in the swamps, Louisiana. Never been to a doctor, had no insurance because he never had a paid job where he had a paycheck and withholdings and any medical benefits. He made his living by catching catfish and crawdads and selling them to Cajun restaurants in New Orleans. Had no utilities, had no insurance, no doctors, the oldest man in America. What on earth is going on here? Well, when he died, the reporters were smart enough to ask his daughter, "What did your daddy do?" And this is her reading the newspaper to him because he's illiterate. He's illiterate. Never got past 6th grade. She's illiterate, just a one school, one room schoolhouse kind of thing. So they asked her, what did your daddy do to live to be 112? And she said, he broke all the rules of healthy eating. Who came up with the rules of healthy eating? Medical doctors who lived to be 56. So he just did the opposite of what medical doctors said. And she went on to say, he broke all the rules of healthy eating with a diet heavy dairy, eggs, and large sandwiches. Dairy, eggs, and large sandwiches. Now we're talking about cholesterol and saturated fat here. The oldest man in America. Never saw a doctor. Couldn't read. Illiterate. Yes, sir.
The veins you were talking about in Costa Rica and in China.
I'm sorry?
The veins you were talking about, where they have the 90 central
Yeah,
minerals.
well, they don't go from one place to the other. They're kind of there locally. When the Earth was solidifying, there were things happening. The Earth was going around, right? And some areas there were denser amounts of these minerals. As the Earth is going around, you put a bit of chocolate in a mixing bowl, and even don't put the blenders in there, but you turn the motor on so it's going around and around. What happens to that blob of chocolate? It starts spreading around through there, right? There's some places that have more than less, and the same principle is true. That's how that happened. And by dumb luck, some areas have a lot of something. For instance, we know there's certain areas in the world. I mean, I was taught this in 3rd grade in school. They don't teach it anymore. There are places in America that don't have much iodine in the salt, so they have high-rated goiter. The goiter belt. Hello? Do you think that's the only mineral out of the 60 that there's zones that have the U.S. Geological Survey that shows where the big concentrations of each of these essential minerals are and where they're deficient. Lo and behold, there's no selenium in the soil, high rate of muscular dystrophy, high rate of cystic fibrosis, high rate of cardiomyopathy, heart disease, high rate of MS, high rate of cataracts, all of which are selenium deficiency diseases.
And for instance, congestive heart failure, the most common cause of heart disease, death in adults in America, it's a deficiency of a single vitamin. In fact, when I went to the next thing after the foxes in the Brookfield Zoo, the Shedd Aquarium there in Chicago, they called me over and said, hey, we hear you're wanting to do autopsies on some cetaceans, which are whales and dolphins and things. I said, yep. They said, well, we got a freshwater dolphin here from the Ganges River in India, just died, and we get 10 or 12 of them every year, and in the spring and by the fall they're all dead. This is pretty typical. Why don't you give us your thoughts what's happening here? So I go over there and cut that thing open. First thing, I knew immediately what it was, because the heart of a 300-pound freshwater dolphin is as big as your fist. Well, this dolphin's heart was as big as a basketball. He died of congestive heart failure, which is a deficiency of a single vitamin. So I said, are you giving these dolphins any vitamins? No, we're feeding them whole fish. They eat fish, so we just give them whole fish. I said, tell me what species of fish, because there are certain fish in their tissues, they have an enzyme that kills that vitamin.
You're not talking about vitamin C.
No. Thiamine.
Thiamine.
Thiaminase. There's a thiaminase in the tissue of smelt. They're feeding because of the size. The smelt was the perfect food from size standpoint for these freshwater dolphins.
They didn't have any thiamine.
They didn't have any thiamine because they weren't putting a multiple and extra thiamine in the mouth of those fish when they fed them to the little freshwater dolphins. If you look at the heart, for instance, which is an electrical thing,
right.
When people start getting palpitations, they are having an electrical conduction problem. So you give them selenium in a colloidal form, problem solved.
Wow.
Okay, and so it's that simple.
Let's look at billionaires first. We actually have a CD. We sent them a CD called What Kills Billionaires. They ran an art. I love it because it sells a lot of our CDs. What kills billionaires? Billionaires are killed by the same unglamorous things that kill everybody else. Heart attack, stroke, pulmonary embolism, diabetes, obesity, cancer, suicide. This came out in 2004. As of 2004, there's never been a billionaire who lived to be 100. The average lifespan was 78, and they didn't like that. So they asked Forbes magazine to rerun it, which they did 7 years later. 7 years later, Forbes magazine reran this study. And as of 2011, 7 years later, there's still not been a billionaire who lived to be 100. 2011, still not been a billionaire who lived to be 100. The average, or all the other sort of stuff that they looked at in 2004 were statistically the same except one. One was dramatically different. That was the average lifespan. Instead of 78, like it was in 2004, the average lifespan in 2011 was 66. It dropped 12 years. Now, from a standpoint of statistics, that's impossible. If they were doing exactly the same thing, they're not going to drop 12 years in average lifespan in a 7-year period. They might drop 12 days or 12 hours. They might gain an hour or gain a month. And, it's kind of like this. It's not a straight line in biology. What happened? They knew that I knew there had to be something driving them. They had to be doing something that drove them to lose 12 years of average lifespan in a 7-year period. What happened? Well, I have a lot of billionaire friends. Because I get the ones that are terminal, inoperable, I save 95% of them. So they'll do a lot of what I ask them to do. Because I charge them nothing. They always say, okay, Wallach, you have everything you want. And they think I'm going to ask for a house in the Caribbean or something, and they would give it to me. But they never speak to me again. So their long-term friendship is more important to me than a house in the Caribbean. So I always tell them, I only want one thing from you, we'll call it even. Okay, Wallach, you can have it. I want you to fire your doctor. And they look at me and say, yeah, that's all I want from you. You fire your doctor. He's the one that said you were inoperable. He's the one that said you were terminal. And I saved you, and all I'm asking for is you to fire the doctor who is going to throw you under the bus. That makes sense. So they fire their doctors. I love it. So I asked them to find out what these guys did, what the billionaires did over time, over that 7-year period, proactively, because they knew they had to be doing something wrong. Bad wrong. They came back a week later and said, Wallach, that was very profound. You're exactly right. What these billionaires did was hire the top personal trainers, the top sports medicine doctors, and they spent over $500,000 in their home, their workplace, each in their home, their workplace, their yachts, and their vacation cabins up in the mountains, putting in fitness centers. Because their personal trainer said, the reason why you're dying so young? Because you don't exercise enough. Look at these third world country guys. They work out in the fields 10 hours a day. If you exercise 3 hours a day instead of nothing, you'll add 25 years to your life. So they were rowing. They were running on the treadmills. They had their stationary bikes. They are just running like crazy. They said, drink plenty of water. So they all got Fiji water. The most expensive water you can buy. They all got Fiji water. And guess what? They just died by sweating out all their nutrients and drinking water. They sweat themselves to death. Well, now they're all drinking Rebound. Here's a very, very smart guy. Steve Jobs, billionaire, very smart technology, very smart marketing. He died 10 years before the average billionaire. He died at 56. Why is that? Well, he was an unsupplemented vegan. He was a vegan who did not take vitamins and minerals, and he believed because somebody told him and convinced him he could save 50 people each day by not eating cows, because a cow eats as much as 50 people. So if he didn't eat cows, he would save 50 people by not encouraging farmers to grow more cows. So there'd be more food for people. That was kind of his reasoning for being a vegan. But then on supplementing, he spent a lot of money for the top organic foods from all over the world to be shipped in by plane for him individually every day. He hired the top 5-star vegan chef to cook everything for him, which he did, and stir-fried everything and salad dressings and everything, and extra, 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 virgin, 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 olive oil and coconut oil. Gave him pancreatic cancer, just like he shot him in the head. And then Steve Jobs made his second most terrible mistake. Instead of going to the Nicoyan Peninsula in Costa Rica in the Pacific coast of Central America, and going and finding the oldest great-great-great-great-great-great-grandma, saying, Grandma, give me what you eat, give me the herbs you would take if you had bad cancer, he'd still be alive today. Instead, he paid millions of dollars to the top experimental cancer doctor to delay treating his other patients, spend his full time creating the ultimate panacea, kind of like the old days of the alchemist, to cure his cancer, and he killed Steve Jobs as sure as he shot him in the head. This guy was a top 5-star chef. What made him interesting was he only did organic foods. And he was hired by queens and kings and emperors all over the world to cook for them organic foods. And he died at 54 of a cardiomyopathy heart attack. Because you can have organic Brussels sprouts. Do they require selenium? No. They can grow on soil and look beautiful with no selenium in them. That at 54, the top vegetarian vegan chef in the world, age 54. The myth about exercise. This is actually done in Loyola Medical School in Chicago. It was published in January of 2009. This is August of 2009. Cover article in Time magazine. The myth about exercise, it won't make you lose weight. If all you do is exercise, you keep eating the same way, you'll actually gain weight. Why? Because when you exercise, you sweat. And sweat is not just water. Sweat is a soup of all the nutrients floating around. So here you are, somebody who loves you, your doctor tells you, you'll be drinking plenty of water when you're working out. And so you're sweating out this soup, say 65 nutrients in it. You're replacing it with water. What's happened to your nutritional reserves? Going down. It reaches a certain point where you're going to eat the bedpost. You're going to eat the rugs. You're going to eat the ashes out of the fireplace. You'll eat the caulking. You'll take a screwdriver and take the caulking off the wall. You'll eat drywall. You eat really weird, or the Tootsie Rolls out of the kitty litter box. Yum, yum. So again, Hell's Kitchen, the book. This was actually started as a sermon that I gave in the church that I go to in San Diego. We actually made a CD first called Hell's Kitchen. And I asked the pastor, I said, well, Pastor, since this was professionally recorded in your church, I have to ask you for permission to use the title I want to use for this. Because a kitchen can be a bad place or good place depending on what you're doing there. I want to call it Hell's Kitchen. He kind of got red a little bit and stroked his chin, thought for a minute. He said, well, hell yeah. Great pastor. Because he knew exactly what I was saying. A kitchen can be a place of hell. You can kill everybody in your family in the kitchen. You just fry everything you're giving them, clog their arteries, give them MS, give them Alzheimer's disease, pour salad dressing all over everything. There's a lovely thought. But it's healthy. Doctors say it's healthy. We better ask your doctor again. He's 56 and a half years old. The subtitle here, Hell's Kitchen, the cause, prevention, and cure of obesity. Nobody else knows this except you and me now. Unless you've read the book. And then you throw in ASAP. Take the Healthy Start Pack, the 90 essential nutrients appropriate for your body weight. You're getting those minerals, which stop the cravings. And then to accelerate the weight loss, instead of a half a pound a week, you want a half a pound a day or 2 pounds a day. You take a dropper full of this ASAP under your tongue. Within 2 or 3 days, you start losing a half a pound to 2 pounds a day. I get hundreds and hundreds of people every month who lose 2 pounds a day. It's not unusual for somebody who needs to lose 200 pounds to lose 140 pounds in 90 days. Very healthily because they're getting all the essential nutrients. As long as they stay on those 90 essential nutrients for their body weight, they will never gain the weight back. The weight will never come back because the basic root cause of being overweight is being minerally deficient. In this book I have coming out, this is a big story in there. Now, how many of you have heard that exercise is good for you? No, whether you believe it or not. How many of you have heard it's good for you? If you don't raise your hand, you're a lying commie. Okay? Because you've all heard it. I know you've all heard it. Jim Fixx, during the 60s, he was the darling of the medical profession. 6'4", weighed 165 pounds. These are actually a picture of his legs. He taught, I think he taught economics in either Yale or Harvard, one of the Ivy League schools out there in New England. And his thing was running. He said, look, don't waste your time on vitamins and minerals. If you look in the index of the book here under vitamins and minerals, it says go to page 165. You go to page 165, and it says don't waste your time taking vitamins and minerals. Just exercise, walk around the block 10 times, and you'll keep your arteries clean, and you'll live longer. You won't waste your money on vitamins and minerals. Well, at age 52, while he was running and preparing for a marathon, he drops dead of a cardiomyopathy heart attack while he was running at age 52. The theory didn't work for him, did it? Now, cardiomyopathy heart attack is due to a deficiency of a single mineral. When Dr. Milan and I did those 1,700 autopsies, 1,700 autopsies of these kids in China, they all died of a cardiomyopathy heart attack, a deficiency of a single mineral. Well, Jim Fixx's protege, his top student, was a Canadian by the name of Brian Maxwell. And Brian Maxwell ran 100 marathons. Never came in less than fifth. I mean, that is awesome. 100 marathons, never came in less than fifth. You got to be kidding me. He had 114 gold medals. 3 were in the Olympics. The other 11 were divided between the triathlon, the World Games, Ironman competition. This guy was probably the most fit guy in modern times, right? Other than Hercules and people like that. And his wife was a nutritionist and dietitian. They came up with a concept of carving up the night before a big event. So you have plenty of glycogen, animal starch in your liver, your muscles, that kind of stuff. They came up with that concept. This guy was no novice when it came to exercise and the physiology of exercise and kind of stuff. Also, he and his wife came up with the first Power Bar. How many have heard of the Power Bar? Power Bar was the first granola bar packaged and sold commercially. It was so successful, he had his picture on the label. Nestle paid him and his wife $300 million for the rights to that granola bar. And they could have come up with their own granola bar, but they wanted his because he was such a famous athlete. They gave him $300 million for it. Then 3 months later, he dies of a cardiomyopathy heart attack while he's running at age 51. Now, Jim Fixx died at 52. He beat his mentor by 1 year. I love this title here. It says, Heart Attack Claims Another Fitness Guru. This obituary is in March of 2004. I was actually up in Canada when this occurred, so this is where I got this article. Probably didn't even show up down here. It's a big story because he's a Canadian. Heart attack claims another fitness guru. Well, today he's not a guru. He's just goo. And I'm a pathologist, and a lot of times when people get to you, they're just goo.
Thanks for sharing.
Okay. Now, in America, you hear of sudden heart death in athletes all the time. Kids, and we were talking about athletes of every sport, people who are cheerleaders and kids under 18 years old. I mean, they're dropping like flies, 10, 12, 16, 20 years old, while they're playing. They're just dropping dead. These are kids who are fit. I mean, they've been training for years. They just drop dead. Sometimes they'll finish their workout, take a shower, go home, and drop dead at home. Somebody needs to go to jail here. Because our paper, Dr. Milan's and my paper, came out in 1990 on 1,700 autopsies on kids under the age of 10 who died of this disease. And not one doctor, not one pediatrician, not one sports medicine doctor has heeded our work. It's published in an international chemistry and medical journal. Published in Chinese and English. This is not like it was a hidden thing in Dell's comic books. 3 big universities were involved. It was published. And our kids are still dying because nobody has implemented what we said to do. Now in China, by implementing what we suggested, they went from 13 kids dying per 1,000 every year of this disease, 13 per 1,000, down to 1 per 1,000. That's huge. We do the same thing here. And all they had to do was take a good multiple vitamin and add this one mineral, selenium, and it stopped all those sudden heart deaths, just like you flipped off a switch. But our guys are smarter than that. They just say, don't waste your time on Wallach's information. Just drink plenty of water. And you'll be dead tomorrow. I mean, I didn't mean to say that, but drink plenty of water. Now, Jim Fixx died in September of 1982. Now, he was the darling of the medical profession. I mean, they loved this guy because he was saying, exercise, don't take vitamins and minerals. I mean, he was the medical system's ally. Well, in December of 1982, the Journal of the American Medical Association did kind of a literature search on sudden heart death, and they said, after reviewing everything, they came out, their little article came out in Runner's World 3 months later, in December of 1982, 3 months after Jim Fixx died, in September of 1982, December 1982. The title was The Exercise Heart Attack Paradox. Now, a paradox is something where the outcome is different than the theory. Now, exercise is supposed to be healthy for your heart. But what they found out was, now remember, this is from the Journal of the American Medical Association, the editors, the sports editors in there, said, while running, a man's risk of heart attack death increases by a factor of 700%. So, gentlemen, if your wife keeps asking you to go take walks and exercise, and she's taking out insurance on you, it means she has a boyfriend. And when it comes to stroke, the age group that has the fastest growing rate of stroke in the United States are kids under the age of 18. Stroke is not genetic. Stroke doesn't just happen. It's not the bad God on Mars creating stroke because you didn't burn enough goats to him. The reason why people have strokes is a simple deficiency or a ratio problem between omega-3s, 6s, and 9s. How many of you supplement your 2-year-olds with omega-3s? I don't see any hands going up. One, maybe. It's your responsibility because doctors know nothing about nutrition. Nothing. You're better off asking a hobo under the bridge who's dumpster diving behind McDonald's when it comes to nutrition, because he'll live longer than the doctor. As crazy that sounds, they live longer than the doctor.
This came out October 11th, this month. Stroke rates increase amongst younger patients. It's happening in younger and younger and younger people now that are getting stroke. And there's many, many reasons for that, but the basic reason is there's 2 types of stroke. 85% of all strokes are caused by blood clots in the brain, thrombotic stroke. This is caused by a simple deficiency of the omega-3 essential fatty acids or a ratio problem between omega-3, 6s, and 9s. Now I'll propose to you, I actually sued the FDA over this and prevailed in federal court, and I'll show you what to do to prevent strokes.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Wallach, our new thing that's coming out tomorrow, how many would a person take if they already have a cancer problem, pancreas cancer? How many would they take?
If a person already has a cancer problem, I would kind of double or triple the dose, because this stuff is designed to knock off the bad cells and support longevity and health of the good cells, and sort of crowd out the bad stuff, right? Depending on what they weigh, I'd have them take 2 Healthy Start packs per month. If they weigh 150 to 220 pounds. If they weigh 300 pounds, it'd be 3 Healthy Start packs. They need 3 selenium twice a day per 100 pounds of body weight. I'd also give them the, I've got to be careful not to name the product. The Z radical, which is a different thing. I'd give them 2 ounces a day per 100 pounds of body weight. If they get diarrhea, cut it to 1 a day, but start them out with 2 twice a day. The Z radical. And then when this new product comes out tomorrow, I'd order that for them immediately and at least give them 4 a day, 2 twice a day. That'd be minimum. I'd go whatever they can afford comfortably.
More wouldn't hurt?
Nope. Remember, there's a bell-shaped curve, and we're talking about, based on cell cultures, we're talking about the average dose that did the job here. Myself, I'm pointing out the center field, so I'm doubling and tripling and 128,000 times, and that kind of stuff. I wouldn't do 28,000 times the minimum dose of arsenic. That'd be too much. That'd probably knock me off. But I can do 10 times the minimum daily requirement of arsenic.
Now you guys don't get off easy. A federal panel now is discouraging PSA prostate screening. Why PSA risk might not be worth it, and this is where that 30,000 number came from. How do men fare after this surgery? Oops, Houston, we have a problem. Time Magazine, Health and Science section, June 4th, 2012. Skip the PSA screen. Experts say PSA blood tests for prostate cancer don't save lives. Now, Warren Buffett was diagnosed with prostate cancer in April of this year, and he chose aggressive treatment, surgery, radiation, chemotherapy. Has anybody seen or heard of him in the last 6 months? Is he dead in the freezer waiting for the stock market to go right before they've revealed his death? I mean, is he off recovering in some island someplace, or is he in a coma? Is he in a hospice? I mean, we don't know what's going on, right? But anyway, this is his story. But the most important piece of the story when this was written up was this paragraph here. Richard Ablin, the scientist who discovered the PSA test, calls the testing's widespread use a public health disaster because it gives a 98% false positive, gives the doctors permission to kill you. Prostate cancer does not kill anybody. If you have prostate cancer and you die, it's always from the treatment. It never goes to your liver, your lungs, your brain. It never kills you. It goes regionally. It'll go into your pelvic bones, your lumbar vertebrae, and your leg bones, but that's it. Probably 90% of all men who die over the age of 85 have prostate cancer. It's usually the size of the head of a pin, never left the prostate gland, but the PSA test is like 100 instead of below 5 like it's supposed to be. Oh my God, you got to get treatment here. You're dead.
Do you have anything on for the prostate?
Yes. There's two things you have to worry about the prostate. One is enlargement. You get up at night to take a pee. You have a struggle getting the stream going. You have to urinate and all kinds of stuff like that. And there's prostate cancer. I'll start out with prostate cancer. Nobody ever dies from prostate cancer. Never kills you. When you get treated for prostate cancer, it's always the treatment that kills you. Prostate cancer will never kill you. It never goes to your liver, your lungs, or your brain. It goes regionally to your bones, your pelvis, your thigh bones, your femurs, your vertebrae. Kind of goes into this area here, but never goes to an organ where it's going to kill you. It's the treatment that always kills you. So even the FDA says, oops, you may want to reconsider treatment for prostate cancer. But doctors who are oncologists, they keep pushing it because that's how they make their money. That's how they pay the tuition for their kids to go to Harvard. They don't have to get student loans, right? 85% of the men who die after 85 have prostate cancer. It's usually the size of the head of a pin. Has not metastasized anywhere. The PSA is like 12 and so forth. They've got prostate cancer, but it doesn't go anywhere. They die of a heart attack while they're having sex with a 20-year-old. You know, that kind of stuff. And so they get hit in a car accident and die, or fall off the roof while they're painting the house. But they don't die of prostate cancer. The prostate cancer never kills you. But what you want to do is be smart, and I'll tell you what to do about prostate cancer nutritionally in a second, because the same thing is true for enlarged prostate, benign prostate hypertrophy, BPH. And this is actually caused by nutritional deficiency. What happens to your thyroid gland when you're deficient in iodine? Does it shrink or get bigger? It gets bigger. You get a goiter. So when you're deficient in iodine, your thyroid gland gets big. What happens to your prostate gland when you're deficient in selenium? It gets big. See? So selenium deficiency causes benign prostate hypertrophy. So you take the 90 essential nutrients. If you're a man, I take extra selenium for that very reason. I don't have time to stand in front of a toilet for 5 minutes to get a stream going. And so I take 3 selenium twice a day in addition to my 2 healthy bone and joint packs. I take 2 bottles a month of selenium, 3 bottles a month of selenium, so I take 3 twice a day. I also take Defects, which is a blend of Asian, African, and North American herbs, which will shrink your prostate gland, even if it's already enlarged, and support normal function of the prostate gland. So I take 3 of those twice a day. That's 2 bottles of that a month.
Okay, now there's not a single medical screening test that prevents the disease. And I saw on TV the other night where the American Cancer Society is still talking about get your screens to prevent cancer. There's not a single screening test, medical screening test that prevents the disease. Now, it might catch it earlier. We can get into the treatment system, which can be a bad or good thing, right? So this is the Globe and Mail, which is the USA Today equivalent in Canada. It's a national newspaper. I just like this title along with that picture here. Screening is not prevention. Now, how many of you ladies have heard of mammograms? Raise your hand. If you don't raise your hand, you're probably lying. Okay, even men have heard of mammograms, right? And that's one of the great screens that doctors like to use. OBGYNs, your primary care physician, will send you in for a mammogram every year once you're 40 years of age. Well, you know, women, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years ago when these things were really being pushed, they said, what about all that radiation? I'm trying to stay away from radiation. I'm protesting against nuclear power plants. We want me to put my breast in that machine. Oh, it's insignificant radiation. How many women have heard that? Yeah. Well, it just came out about 3 weeks ago. They said one mammogram gives you the amount of radiation of 500 chest x-rays. Well, we're sorry. A little mistake. It was a decimal point problem. One mammogram, 1 CAT scan, 1 MRI gives you the equivalent radiation of 500 chest x-rays. If you have 1 mammogram, ladies, a year for 5 years, it increases your risk of breast cancer by 20%. And if you're taking HRT, if you're taking, estrogen along with that, you're up to 60% increase in risk of breast cancer. If you're eating your meat cooked well done at the same time, it increases your risk of breast cancer by 462%. I'll actually show you that experiment was done. It was a 20-year study on the Nurses' Health Study by the University of South Carolina on 90,000 nurses over 20 years. It increases your risk of breast cancer by 462%. Now to see, does Susan G. Coleman tell you that? No. So, next time your doctor says, look, it's time for you, I'm looking in here, you're beyond your year, you need to go get a mammogram. You should say, well, I don't think I want to do that. I'm concerned about the safety. And the doctor will say, well, I insist because I'm one responsible for your health and I don't want you to get breast cancer. Now what he's really saying is, I don't want to give up my $400 I get kickback from the radiology laboratory, because radiology is one of the things that doctors get kickbacks on. If you get an ultrasound, they get 10 bucks. A mammogram, it's 400 bucks. They're happy about those things, right? Now, so what you're going to say, ladies, is this. Look, I'm concerned about safety, and if you can convince me it's safe, I'll do the mammogram. And here's what I want you to do. What I want you to do is put your testicles in the machine. And I want you to let me be the one to crank down on that plate until you groan a little bit. Ah. Then I want to be the one to yell to the guy standing behind the 2 inches of lead and say, "Hit it, Frank!" If you'll let me do those 3 things, I'll get the mammogram. And you know what that doctor's going to say? No! You can do your own self-examination at 10 o'clock in the morning on the 15th of every month, even if you're 10 years into menopause. Keep a log and map out your breast where all the little bumps and lumps are you've had all your life, you know, kind of thing. But suddenly now this little pea-sized knot that's been there forever is a little tender now. It never used to be tender. Go get a high-definition ultrasound. It'll actually give you more information than a mammogram. There's no radiation.
Who has not asked you a question yet? Yes.
I have a friend who has a brain tumor,
Okay.
benign, and the doctor said that she should just wait until like vision is blurry or something, but is there something she could do?
Absolutely. Now, I'm assuming this is in the pituitary gland. Either the benign tumors are in the pituitary gland. How old is this person?
39.
Okay. Is it male or female?
Female.
Now, does she have any other sort of problems that may or may not be related to this? Like, does she drip milk out of her breast? Does she have high blood pressure? Does she have diabetes? No? Just this enlargement in her brain?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so here's what I would do. Get her on a gluten-free diet. Anything going on with the brain, you got to get them on a gluten-free diet. No wheat, barley, rye, and oats. No fried foods, no processed meats with nitrates and nitrites, no oils. What does she weigh? Is she big or little?
Maybe 160.
160, okay.
160, like,
Then she needs 2 healthy heart and brain packs per month. Right? And they know what this is. 2 healthy heart and brain packs per month, 1 full dose of breakfast, 1 bolus of dinner. Now here's the secret sauce for this girl. Additionally, she's going to need 12 HGH a day, 6 at breakfast and 6 at bedtime with a glass of water. I take 6 twice a day. Why do I do that? Because I don't want these problems. I don't want milk dripping on my breast. You know, I don't want these problems. You see, these little kids, I get calls by distraught grandmothers and mothers every week. I got a 4-year-old granddaughter. The pediatrician says she's got a brain tumor and her pituitary is benign. They want to crack her head open and take her pituitary gland out. And they say, well, before you consider that, let me offer you an option. I have to ask you one question. Is your granddaughter or your daughter on soy milk? Oh, yeah, she was colicky, which tells me she had a gluten intolerance. She's colicky, and so we had to put her, she couldn't tolerate breast milk or formula, so we put her on soy milk. She got on soy milk for her whole life. Well, guess what's in soy milk? Phytoestrogens, the stuff you give postmenopausal women. Why would you give a 4-year-old girl or a 4-year-old boy the same thing you give a postmenopausal woman for phytoestrogens? It's an insane thing. Now, tofu, which is fermented soy, doesn't give the problem. There's no problem like that in China. When you give them soy milk, it's a totally different problem because it's not fermented. So got to get off the soy milk, all soy, okay? And that double dose of the, it'll say 6 capsules a day. She's going to go through 2 canisters a month of the HGH. 6 in the morning with a glass of water, 6 at bedtime with a glass of water. It'll give the pituitary everything it needs for raw materials. But she got to take a gluten-free diet so she can absorb it, right? It'll all go away. But I'm glad the doctor said, he's smarter than the average bear, because he said, let's not be hasty here, let's wait. Okay? Yes?
I have skin problems like psoriasis,
Okay,
eczema.
you have gluten
like...
intolerance.
Hmm?
You have gluten intolerance.
Uh-huh.
I know from here you also have a copper deficiency. You have a raging copper deficiency, which contributes to the skin problems. Do you also have, for instance, any spider veins or varicose veins? Spider veins?
Varicose.
Yeah.
They come and go.
Varicose, yeah. And you could even have hemorrhoids, which are varicose veins in funny places.
Mm-hmm.
These are all caused by copper deficiency.
Oh.
Even more scary, aneurysms, whether they're up here, coronary arteries, aortas, aneurysms are caused by copper deficiency. It's a breakdown of the elastic fibers in blood vessels. There's low pressure in a vein, so you get spider veins and varicose veins or hemorrhoids. There's high pressure in an artery, so you get blowouts. Called aneurysms, right? Just like you hit a chuck hole with your tire and you break the cords in there. That's caused by copper deficiency. You're at high risk for an aneurysm because you have white, gray, and silver hair. That's why you have varicose veins, because you have white, gray, and silver hair. The same thing causes white, gray, and silver hair. Copper deficiency causes aneurysm. Now you're at high risk for Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease, which is the name for human version of mad cow disease. Mad cow disease is not caused by prions. It's caused by copper deficiency. Okay. All this stuff is coming out in this book.
What do you recommend? Do you have products?
Well, yeah. We have you're a big guy. You want 2 healthy I'd have you take 2 healthy heart and brain packs or 2 healthy start packs, and then you throw in 3 of our selenium 3 times a day. Why selenium? It's not a selenium deficiency, it's a copper deficiency. Well, we put lots of copper in our selenium because it's a cofactor necessary for the selenium to work properly. So that's how you're going to get the most selenium, is by taking 6 of our selenium a day. The most copper is to take 3 selenium at breakfast and dinner. That's 2 bottles a month. And I would take 2 of the healthy heart and brain packs, or 2 healthy start packs per month, plus the extra copper, which is in the selenium. Your hair color will come back. But you got to be on a gluten-free diet. The psoriasis will go away. Usually within a guy your age will be 3 to 6 months, it'll go away. But the dog in the house, the cat, everybody living in your house, wife, sister, kids, grandkids, grandma, mother-in-law, everybody's got to be gluten-free. Because just cross-contamination, laundry, the couch, the rug, the food preparation surface will get you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, so why do things look generational? I mean, that's an obvious question. Why do things look generational? Well, I have 5 generations in my family with diabetes. You're telling me that it's not genetic. It's obvious it's genetic because I have 5 generations. Well, here it is, folks. How many of you ever heard of gluten intolerance? Okay, gluten intolerance doesn't mean you're allergic to wheat. A lot of doctors will test you for wheat allergy and say, well, you're not allergic to wheat. Go ahead and eat all the wheat you want. Bam, you're dead. Gluten intolerance is kind of like poison ivy. I can guarantee you, and I just met most of you, I can guarantee you that none of you in this room is allergic to poison ivy because you don't eat it for salad. There's no pollen associated with it, so nobody's allergic to poison ivy. But I guarantee you're all intolerant of it. Nobody would voluntarily, without a lot of money being offered to them, drop their pants and let me take some nice, fresh, juicy poison ivy and rub it all over your bottom, because you'd get contact dermatitis, wouldn't you? It'd be bad. It'd be really bad. Okay? You would not like the result. The same way, when you eat gluten and you have a gluten intolerance, you're not allergic to wheat, but you're going to get a contact enteritis. And enteritis is an inflammation of the intestines. Some doctors call it leaky gut syndrome, because when they test you, they'll test what you put in here and it all comes out the other end. They say, well, you got leaky gut, because they're assuming their little pea brains are absorbing it. You're not absorbing it. You never absorbed it at all. You are not what you eat. That old adage, you are what you eat, that's absolutely positively not true. You're not what you eat. You are what you absorb. And when you're gluten intolerant, what happens is those little finger-like villi that help move the food along, also, they increase your absorbent surface by 85%. What happens is, when you're gluten intolerant, they go away over a period of months and years. They just go away. And suddenly now, your intestines are just a smooth tube like a garden hose. You lose all those villi. Some of the classic symptoms of a basic gluten intolerance are eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, rosacea, asthma, chronic bronchitis. And then you wind up with 20, 30 different diseases over the years. As time goes along, you can't, even if you're supplementing, you can't absorb the stuff. You wind up with all these diseases. This is a cover article in the New York Times Sunday magazine, February 4th, 2013. Why is that? The title was, Eat No Wheat. The cover picture was a guy in a hazmat suit holding a slice of organic whole wheat bread. Now, while these diseases are not genetically transmitted, gluten intolerance is transmitted by cord blood and breast milk. So one of my worst nightmares is dealing with women who love their breast. I am woman. I have breast. I have all this milk, but my baby is one of these colicky babies and can't tolerate my milk. So I'm going to save the world. I'm going to donate my milk to the Lychee League. And they give somebody else's baby a gluten intolerance. You see, human breast milk is not perfect food for many people. If you're gluten intolerant, it is not perfect food. I get them on the radio. They call me all the time. Oh, I have an autoimmune disease. Well, tell me about it. Yeah, I've been to 27 doctors over the last 14 years. They all say I have autoimmune disease. Every year I get a new disease. I have 22 diseases now. I'm on 27 prescription drugs. I have all these problems. They've opened me up and operated on me and taken this out and taken that out, and they're prepared to do it again because nobody can figure out what I got. They say, did you have your appendix out? Yeah. Did you have asthma as a kid? Well, yeah, I still have it. Any skin problems? Yeah, I got rosacea. Well, you have gluten intolerance. Did any doctor ever tell you that? No, but I was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. For more than 20 years, not a single doctor, if they knew it, said anything about it. I just think they're ignorant and they didn't even know it. But they should all go to jail because ignorance of the law is not a defense, is it? Somebody has to stand back and say, you know, we've been treating Crohn's disease the same way for 70 years. It all winds up the same way in disaster. Maybe we should relook at this thing. You see, there's no competition. What's the odds of finding the right information if everybody knows the earth is flat?
Now, real quick, I wonder if you could touch upon the digestive system. We got 80 million Americans with digestive problems. 1 out of 3 Americans are dealing with some kind of digestive issue. When we know with liquid nutrients you can bypass a lot of that, but what would you recommend for folks in terms of not essential nutrients necessarily, but accessory nutrients that people can use to support digestive wellness?
Okay, well, first of all, the old theory used to be you are what you eat, right?
Right.
That's not right.
It's what you absorb.
You are what you absorb.
Yeah.
Very good. You
Right.
are what you absorb.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so when you pick the right number, when you said 30% of Americans have a terrible digestive problem, Mayo Clinic came out in 2009 and said 30% of Americans have gluten intolerance. Now, there's some communities that eat a lot of grains because they're, you know, for whatever reason,
Cheap.
that's, well, it's cheap. It's stored up for years in case there's some imminent disaster, right? We're talking about the Amish, the Mennonites, the Hutterites, the Mormons, the Seventh-day Adventists are all vegetarians, eat a lot of grains. They have 80% gluten intolerance. Now, what that does is you lose the villi in your small intestines, and you get celiac disease, you get diverticulitis, you get irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease,
And
you get ulcerative colitis.
and you don't absorb your nutrients.
You lose 85% ability to absorb them. So what's 15% of nothing?
Nothing.
Very little.
Yeah.
Right? And so the problem we have now is all these people now are being told to eat whole grains. And so there's all this gluten intolerance happening, so people are not absorbing what little nutrition there might be naturally in the food.
Right.
And they're not supplementing. And so you have to get off of gluten. You have to supplement properly. And then 99% of these problems go away. When you're talking about diseases, for instance, like, you have a baby born with muscular dystrophy, cystic fibrosis, cleft palate, they're born deaf, and all this kind of stuff. Invariably, the mother will be gluten intolerant. Because what little nutrients are in the food, she can't absorb them very efficiently.
So she's got a malnourished fetus.
She's got a malnourished fetus.
Wow.
It's not genetic.
Oh, yeah, it's malnourishment.
It's malnourishment. But here's the thing that gives doctors a little bit of hope that their theory is correct. Gluten intolerance is passed on through cord blood or breast milk. It's not genetic, but the glutens are passed on
The allergens.
Well, they're not even allergens. It's not an allergy. It's an intolerance.
So in other words, the proteins, the peptides are passed through in the milk, and the baby becomes intolerant to it as well.
Yes, exactly. Now here's the deal. Nobody's allergic to poison ivy because there's no pollen involved. Nobody eats it for salads. But everybody is intolerant of it. Now you rub poison ivy on yourself, you don't get an allergic reaction.
You don't get an immune reaction.
You have a contact dermatitis.
Right.
The same thing when you eat gluten and you have a gluten intolerance, you don't get an allergic reaction. You get a contact.
It's a mechanical issue. Would you say it's
a
mechanical?
chemical irritant. You get a contact enteritis. Okay.
So it's not necessarily an allergic reaction.
It is not an allergic reaction.
It's still an immune reaction.
No.
It's not even an immune
No.
reaction. Is it mechanical?
It's a chemical irritant.
So
It's a
gluten is an irritant.
Oh yeah, it's a contact
There's
enteritis.
bakers will get it too. There's
On their
baker's
hand.
dermatitis.
Well, yeah, exactly the same thing.
Same idea.
And so what you do is you get these people on gluten-free diets. Their asthma goes away in 2 weeks.
It's amazing.
And you have a woman who's had 3 kids in a row with muscular dystrophy. You put her on a gluten-free diet. You give her the 90 essential nutrients appropriate for her body weight. You throw in some extra selenium. She'll never have another child with muscular dystrophy. She can have 10 more kids, but none of them will have muscular dystrophy because it's not genetic.
That's amazing. Now, are there other things in grains aside from gluten? Gluten gets all the press, but there's other things as well. Are there other proteins, other peptides?
Well, sure, there are allergens. You can get a wheat allergy, but it's not necessary to be gluten intolerant.
Is grain a problematic food, in your opinion?
Yes, it is, because human beings were never designed to eat grain.
Yeah.
Now, the animals that do very well with grain are
They have
ruminants.
extra stomachs.
They have 4 stomachs.
Yeah. So if we have 4 stomachs, maybe we'd be able to eat that.
Well, we'd be able to eat grain.
Yeah.
We have a single stomach, and we don't have the capacity to handle grains like an antelope and a buffalo, a buffalo and the horses and cattle and sheep and goats and all these animals with 4 stomachs. When you look around the world, other than one-celled animals, the 4-stomach animals are the most universal form. They're everywhere, on every continent, every place. There's more species of ruminant animals than there are elephants.
So our digestive system just isn't designed to eat these kinds of
That's
things.
right.
Isn't that interesting? You know about Jared Diamond, right? Mm-hmm. He wrote a paper called Agriculture was the worst thing that ever happened to us in human history, something along those lines. But the idea being that we're not supposed to be eating these kinds of foods.
Germs, guns, and...
guns, germs, and steel. Yeah. But the idea is that we're not supposed to be eating these kinds of foods. What about gluten-free? What about gluten-free flours and gluten-free grains? What's your take on those?
Well, gluten-free grains are what? We're talking about millet.
Yeah.
Buckwheat, which is not wheat.
Quinoa.
And you're looking at rice. You ever hear of the old macrobiotic diet?
I don't know a lot about it.
Well, during the 60s, the hippies, all those flower children were running around eating the macrobiotic diet, which was essentially a German cleansing diet that was made from brown rice and steamed vegetables. It was only supposed to be done for 2 weeks, but they felt good on this stuff, right? And so they added a little bit of fish to it, maybe some eggs, so you get enough protein so you could live on it forever. And, I mean, these people were solving problems like eczema, asthma, were all going away on this macrobiotic diet. And they said, it's the magic of the brown rice. No. It's because they gave up wheat.
That's interesting.
And there was this Michio Kuchi who popularized, he's a Korean guy who popularized the macrobiotic diet. He had terminal pulmonary tuberculosis. I mean, 90% of his lungs were filled up with tubercle abscesses, and he was beyond hope, according to the doctors, right? He got on the macrobiotic diet, and 3 months later, he's gluten-free, he's cured. There's more people in America die from water intoxication every year, not drowning, but water intoxication. They drink too much too fast, it dilutes out the potassium, and they die of heart stoppage. Water intoxication. More people die of that every year during hot weather than anything else. Wow. Water intoxication. Now, vitamin A, why did they call it vitamin A? Because it was the first one discovered. When it was discovered over 4,000 years ago by the Egyptians, they could get rid of night blindness, which we know is caused by vitamin A deficiency, by giving people extracts of liver. They'd squeeze liver, get the juice out of the liver, give it to you, and night blindness would go away.
Vitamin A is a stupendously important vitamin as well. How about for the immune system, vitamin A for the immune system?
Of course, because it's an antioxidant.
Yeah.
It helps protect you from free radicals and also helps your immune system fight against organisms, transmitted organisms like bacteria and viruses and fungus and yeast and all kinds of stuff. Now, the fastest growing disease today in the industrialized world in kids is rickets. It's a physician-caused disease. Let's see, stay out of the sun, get skin cancer, put on SPF 7 billion sunblocker, long sleeves, gloves, big brim hats, shades. Don't go out after 9 in the morning. You stay inside until after dark. Stay inside doing your twittering and texting and making, you know, all your computer stuff. Don't you eat egg yolks because you can get cholesterol damage to your heart. That's where you find vitamin D3 naturally. Don't you take vitamins and minerals because you can overdose. This is a physician-caused disease. It's a perfect storm. Everything doctors have told you about nutrition is the cause right now of every industrialized nation. The worst possible nutritional deficiency disease in kids is rickets. Rickets! In the 21st century. Because doctors know nothing about nutrition. Okay, let's take 20, 30 minutes. We'll answer questions. We'll start out there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you had well, I've got 2 questions if I can. Have you had any success of people who have had peripheral neuropathy, that have regained normal feeling in the extremities?
Absolutely. We do this 1,000 times a day. Been doing it for 35 years. It's a very simple disease. It's a back problem when you have peripheral neuropathy. It's always a back problem. How much have you shrunk since you were 20 years old? How much have you shrunk in height?
I really haven't.
I don't believe you.
Now, I'm 6 foot tall, as same as I was at 18.
Okay, anybody here 6 foot tall exactly?
Come up here, please.
Yeah, 6 foot.
You look taller than 6'2" to me.
Yeah.
You got big shoes on.
I get shoes with that.
Okay. Just stand back to back.
Bigger boy.
Yeah, he's a bit taller than 6.
No, he's got thicker soles on.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, but you have degenerative disc disease is your problem. What happens is when the vertebrae get closer together, they smash the roots of the spinal nerves coming out from between the lumbar vertebrae. When you lay down at night to go to sleep, do you get creepy crawlies in your legs or cramps or anything like that?
No, I used to. It's been about 15 years ago that I discovered I had this. The doctor told me it'll only get worse. It'll never get
Restless
better.
leg syndrome, yeah.
Yeah, and he also told me I was ridiculous because I was reading too much. I started reading up on it and changed my diet.
Okay, good.
And went to using no alcohol at all. Because no alcohol is one of the worst things to
Now,
use.
what do you weigh?
Right now, my weight is about 185.
Okay, close enough to 200 pounds. So you're a perfect candidate. You want to write this down. You're a perfect candidate. And so you guys, so I need somebody here to write this down for them.
Sure.
So now, do you have anything else I need to know about high blood pressure, diabetes, anything like that?
I'm mildly diabetic.
Well, kind of like being pregnant. Is anybody mildly pregnant?
Well, I'm not as diabetic as I was when I discovered I was diabetic.
Yeah, because you're working on it for diet. That's good. But you're still a diabetic.
Yeah.
And people say, well, I got it under control with drugs. No, you don't.
Well, no,
You can have your blood sugar under control and you're still going to die of diabetes. Okay.
I've got it pretty much under control with diet and exercise.
It doesn't matter.
It's not like it was before.
Yeah, see, you got the blood sugar thing. Blood sugar is not diabetes. It's a symptom of diabetes.
Yeah.
So you can still get your symptom under control, just like you have brain cancer. You take an aspirin to kill the pain in your brain. Have you solved your problem? No. All you've done is solve the symptom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he needs 2 healthy bone and joint packs per month. Take a full dose of everything at breakfast, full dose of everything at dinner. That'll be allowed by the 2 healthy bone and joint packs per month. And that'll also allow you to have 15 glucogel capsules a day, 5 at breakfast, 5 at lunch, 5 at dinner, and that's to rebuild the disc in your back. Even if it's a millimeter or 2 per disc, push them apart and relieve the pressure off of those roots of the spinal nerves coming out from between your vertebrae. Now, there will be 2 canisters, 2 wide mouth jars of CM cream, 1 with each of the healthy bone and joint packs. You have your lovely wife here put on your lumbar vertebrae right down the middle, 2 or 3 times a day, and about an inch on either side. So it's going to be a space about that big, about 2 inches wide, right down the middle, from your last rib down to your tailbone kind of thing. And it'll relieve a lot of that inflammation. A lot of times you'll get relief just even before you regrow the disc between the vertebrae, just from relieving the inflammation and swelling. Okay? And it'll all go away that quickly, very quickly. Usually 60, 90 days is gone. Very quick. Never fails. Never fails. That's a pretty bold statement. Right after the Civil War, there was a string of what was called retardation centers all down the East Coast, across this Old South, the Confederate States. The retardation centers were built by the American government out of the goodness of their hearts and your tax money to take care of people who had pellagra, because they knew that it was caused by a germ. And they wanted to isolate these people just like they did for tuberculosis. So they built these retardation centers for these people that had mental illnesses and from pellagra, which is a vitamin B3 deficiency. It's a niacin deficiency. And for 150 years, they're pursuing the germ until one guy went to an orphanage where all the kids had pellagra. He just gave them fresh fruit and vegetable and cured it in a couple weeks. Another one of my favorites, and we're going to take a, after they clear up all these terrorists in Russia, we're going there. Beautiful little kids. In this little village in Russia, each year, 50% of the kids there are born with 100% of this birth defect. You'll know what I mean in a second. 25% are born with 25% of this birth defect, and the other 25% are born with a different type of variation on this birth defect. The doctors there tell them it's a genetics caused by radiation from the power plant 700 miles away. Caca. You know, that's a scientific word, caca. Now, most people look at these kids, they're so cute, you don't really see the birth defect at first. But each of these kids is missing their left forearm. In that village, 50% every year, they're born with both forearms missing. 25% are born with their left forearm missing. 25% are born with their right forearm missing. Now, genetics don't work that way. Now, if they're all born with their right forearm missing, you could say, well, it has the possibility, it has a look of genetics, but I guarantee it wouldn't be. But, you know, you could say that. But this variation, it's not. You just fourth grade biology, you know it's not. You need to spend millions of dollars trying to do tests. Okay? And so, in the near future, maybe when I'm 100 years old, we'll retire, and we'll go to Russia, and we'll take enough nutrients for all these sexually active women who are in the childbearing years, and give them a year's supply of this stuff. And that year, there will never be a baby born with that, but I guarantee you, the special nutrient called zinc is missing in that soil. This is type of limb deformities are caused by a zinc deficiency. Somebody needs to go to jail. This is one of my favorite slides. Everybody knows about belly button hernias. This kid's born with one the size of a walnut. You give him a hypnotic, not enough to put him under general anesthesia, but just enough to make him kind of drug-induced intoxication. You give him some local anesthesia, and in 10 minutes' time, this is easily dealt with. But here's another belly button hernia. This one, probably mama was missing some zinc for a week as the embryo goes from a disc into a tube, and this piece didn't get zippered up during development. Well, here's one. These two, next two, were on the autopsy table. These are, I'm a pathologist, so I see crazy stuff like this. This one, there was no skin over the belly button hernia, and the stomach and the spleen and some of the intestines were hanging out. And of course, it caused that child his life. It was a perfect baby, nothing wrong with that baby except a little belly button hernia. And the muscles incarcerated that circulation and all that stuff, and the baby dies of circulatory shock during the birth process. And here's one that's really wild. Same thing on the autopsy table. Here, the liver, the stomach, the spleen, all the intestines are out. That's a catastrophic belly button hernia. Totally avoidable. The OBGYN didn't have his license suspended for 3 seconds. Didn't have to pay a parking ticket. Got to walk. Now, if a mechanic scratches your car while he's rotating the tires, you sue him. Oh, this was just an act of God. No, it wasn't. It was a failure of the system.
This young fellow died at 21 years of age of Crohn's disease and a certain type of liver disease called primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is a simple nutritional deficiencies. How many of you heard of Crohn's disease? Okay, Crohn's disease is a simple problem, very simple problem. They say it's an autoimmune thing, and he fought valiantly for 11 years, then he died. All they do is give him prednisone and cortisone and tell him to eat, give up lettuce and stupid things like that, right? And he died at 21 years of age of complications of Crohn's disease and liver disease. All he had to do was go on a gluten-free diet. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Go on a gluten-free diet, take the 90 essential nutrients, and he'd live to be 121. But when it comes to these things, doctors are either very stupid or they're criminals, because if they know the answer and they choose to treat him rather than cure him, they should have cured him when he was 10 years old in 3 to 6 months. But if they're ignorant, that means they don't know what to do. If they know what to do and they choose to treat him for a long period of time for the money, that means they're criminals, right? And so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and just say they're stupid, ignorant people.
In 1977, I discovered the first non-human case of cystic fibrosis in a monkey at the Yerkes Primate Center at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. Not a schlucky place. I mean, this is one of the pinnacles of science in America. This was looked at by all the experts in cystic fibrosis, and they said, Wallach, you're correct. This is the first non-human case of cystic fibrosis, no doubt about it. This is a classic case of cystic fibrosis. Nobody can deny this. What we want to know is, how many other monkeys have this? Well, I did biopsies of age peers of this monkey in a gang cage. They're not related in any other way. I did liver and pancreatic biopsies, and they all had cystic fibrosis. Well, I tracked back the diet of that group, and I figured it out. I knew by then I'd already done like almost 30,000 autopsies, 8,000 in humans and 22,000 in animals, 10 million chemistries. The book I wrote in that is 1,200 pages. It's in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure. So this isn't just smoking pot and coming up with a wild theory. This is based on 10 million chemistries. Okay, looking at nutrition and pollution and all that kind of stuff. That's why Jeffrey Bland likes me. Because nobody else has ever done that. I'm not smarter than anybody else, but nobody has the experience. Okay? And so, I'm going to divert here just a second. It's worth 3 or 4 slides for you to see this. Because this is all coming out. This is a major part of the book. And here's the Emory University news release, 1978. Scientists at the Yerkes Primate Research Center, Emory University, have discovered cystic fibrosis in a young rhesus monkey at autopsy, the first non-human case, blah, blah, blah. This appears to be the first animal model of cystic fibrosis. We're all excited about it. That's me, Joel Wallach, right? I'm the guy that made the discovery. And these guys are like crazy with this. And then they fired me. They fired me. 24 hours after I told them that I could create 1,000 baby monkeys with cystic fibrosis in 6 months if they wanted that many. We could have every university study cystic fibrosis, and we'll have it. We'll know exactly how to prevent it and cure it within weeks. And they fired me. They said, Wallach, you must be sniffing good. You must be smoking pot, because everybody knows it's genetic. That's why I'm considered one of the founders of epigenetics. That's why Jeff Bland is so excited about this book, because it tells the whole story, blow by blow, detail by detail, every scuzzbag doctor involved in getting me fired. Because their genetic career was on the line. They didn't care about the kids. They did not care about kids. They wanted to protect their little dung heap. At first, this is what the newspaper said, because of that news release. Cystic fibrosis finding is hailed. Breakthrough reported in the cystic fibrosis fight. And then it went to theory on cystic fibrosis is disputed. So I went back to school and became a physician. 1978, and began as an advanced standing student. So in 1978, right after I was fired, I began treating kids with cystic fibrosis. This little girl here, Sydney Myers, was up for a double lung transplant at 2 years old. Got her going. Reversed her genetic markers. Oh, by the way, this is the study that Dr. Milan and I did in China. Common denominators in etiology and pathology of visceral lesions of cystic fibrosis and Kishan disease, cardiomyopathy, heart disease in China, Kishan province. I should have this over here. Okay. There she is at 8 years old. We have dozens of kids now that we've reversed their genetic markers, positive sweat tests, so on. Little Italian kid. I mean, the hospitals, this is a blind study, not a double-blind study, but a blind study, because we're giving them this stuff and the hospitals don't know it. They're testing them every couple of months. They go positive, 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 negative, what's going on here? Why do they suddenly go negative? They were on our stuff for 30 days. When they're just less than a year old, in 2 weeks, they convert back to normal. When they're 3 years old, it takes them 2, 3, 4 weeks. When they're 10 years old, it takes them 4 to 6 months. When they're 25 years old, it takes them a year, but they go back to normal. Now, in 2011, in the in the International Laboratory Animal Research Journal, the entire journal in June of 2011 was devoted to serendipitous, accidental findings involving non-human primates. The reason why they did that was because in 2011, the federal government canceled all research in primates because it's too expensive. $1,000 a day compared to a mouse is 10 cents a day. So you use mice. If you want to use primates, go to Bill Gates Foundation. Go to Warren Buffett. Don't come to us. So they did this whole issue on the accidental findings in primates that helped human health to say, please reconsider, you know, don't kill. I mean, we got billions of dollars worth of facilities here and monkeys. What are we doing? We're going to kill them all? I mean, come on. We can't just suddenly stop here, so give us 10 years, 20 years. Or something. They're trying to soften the blow here. Well, you might guess, you probably guessed, that they gave 5 top stories and accidental findings in primates that benefited human health. Guess what number 2 was? Cystic fibrosis in a non-human primate. Emory University, 1978, reported a classic textbook case of cystic fibrosis found in humans had been identified in a non-human primate, an animal for which there has not been described previously. An assistant veterinary pathologist, me, actually, I was more than that. I was a comparative pathologist. I was doing human and animal autopsy, but they call me an assistant veterinary pathologist. I mean, right. Now here it comes. Now be prepared for this. Let's see here. Oh, we're down here. The diagnosis. Oh, there we go. An assistant veterinary pathologist whose name was withheld by Emory University. They were so embarrassed that they fired me in 1978, they wouldn't even give out my name. Now, are they that stupid? If they say, oh, gosh, this was identified in 1978, well, that's easy. They just go back to 1978, find the news releases. So I started winning all these kind of medals based on the stuff that went on in 1978. Now, millions of kids have died since then. And they're still going to die. Because they never said, well, there was a failed theory or whatever. You know, they said nothing. They just said one was found. Somebody needs to go to jail. Well, here's the result of that study, and here's why I'm considered one of the founders of epigenetics. Up until this award, 2011, I'm the first veterinarian and the first naturopathic physician to get this award. For 28 years in a row, only medical doctors and MD, PhDs got the award. I'm the first veterinarian and the first naturopathic doctor to get the award. And of course, I just loved it that they used the Emory University photograph. You got to love it, right? To show that this discovery has been made by this assistant pathologist who nobody named. That really pissed these people off, okay? They could have kind of rectified or at least gotten some sympathy from me if they had said, okay, we fired this guy, it was stupid on our part, but our guys, those guys are all dead or gone, blah, blah, blah. And so this is Dr. Strauser awarding me the gold medal, the Klaus Schwarz medal. Now, why the Klaus Schwarz medal? Because Klaus Schwarz is the guy who discovered that selenium is an essential nutrient. Hooah! I'm very, very proud of that. Calcium deficiency causes 147 different diseases, all of which will kill you, but it might take 40 years to kill you for the calcium deficiency. Every medical and dental specialty loves calcium deficiencies because they all make most of their money from a calcium deficiency.
Well, let's look at some famous people that they've killed who are seniors. How about Andy Rooney? Anybody remember Andy Rooney from 60 Minutes? Sunday afternoons, kind of a TV show. Well, he retired almost exactly a year ago. In October of last year, he retired. He's 92 years old, and he and his wife were going to run this world cruise. And so they decided they were going to go in for a physical in case they needed to take some medication with them. They didn't want to be out in the ocean for 6 months and have to go to some doctor in a foreign country that they didn't know and all that kind of stuff. And so the doctor for Andy Rooney, he's kind of leafing through his medical records, and they said, Andy, you're 92 years old here, and I can't find where you've ever had a colonoscopic exam. I mean, there could be cancer lurking around in there. And of course, he had no symptoms, no bleeding in his bowel movements, no pain, no weight loss. He's happy as a clam, waiting to go on his cruise. And what he should have said was, no! But instead, what he said was, okay, because he didn't want to offend the doctor in a white coat and a stethoscope. So the doctor sticks a garden hose up his rump, punctures his intestine. 3 days later, he's dead from peritonitis, a belly infection. Nothing wrong with the guy, and the doctor kills him. Now, they didn't name the doctor. They didn't name the hospital, because if the hospital and the doctor's name went out, I mean, my God, it would interrupt their cash flow. Everybody would cancel. It would be a mess, right? So they're not going to name those guys. Now, what makes this really bad is, in here, the cause of death is listed. You go online and look at Andy Rooney obituary, and you'll find him. They always say, Mr. Rooney died of complications of a minor medical procedure. Well, wasn't minor for him. It killed him. Doctor gets a walk. Hospital gets a walk. How many of you heard of Dick Clark, American Bandstand? Okay. He went in for an outpatient procedure. He was supposed to be having the procedure 11, done by 11:30, out in the golf course by 1 o'clock. That's what he was told. Now, what he was going to have was one of those little rotor-rooter things on his prostate gland, because he'd have to stand in front of the toilet for 2 or 3 minutes before he could get a urine stream going. So instead of coming to me and getting it fixed with nutrition, it's a simple nutritional problem, instead of getting it fixed with nutrition, he opts for the scientific thing. Let's do surgery and rotor-root it out. Starts at 11 o'clock as scheduled. 11:30 he's dead. He died of a coronary thrombosis. That happens to 30,000 men each year within an hour after the procedure. Now, there's another 200,000 each year that have a stroke or coronary thrombosis, but they don't die. 30,000 of them die every year from that procedure. I'll show you that fact in a minute. Now, how do you remember a guy by the name of Neil? Anybody remember Neil? I'll give you one more piece of the name. How about Neil Armstrong? How many remember Neil Armstrong? Our top astronaut, right? The first guy to step foot on the moon. He saved, single-handedly, he saved 2 NASA missions. Saved the spacecraft, saved 2 crews. It was a mess. That he saved NASA from a terrible disaster 2 times. So he's 82 years old. He goes in for his physical. They say, Neil, you're 82 years old. We've never seen a specimen like you. He's 82 years old. You're as fit as can be. That NASA program must be really great. But we did find one little thing we're concerned about. You have a blocked artery. You got a 30% blockage in a coronary artery. Now, it's not dangerous now. You don't even have symptoms. No, I don't have any chest pain or anything. No angina. Okay, you're not breathless. No, he said, I can run 20 miles every day, no problem. Okay, well, you're fit now. And what we're proposing is we don't wait for 5 years until it's 70% blocked or 85% blocked. We don't wait until you have a heart attack in the middle of the night and you die on the way to the hospital. You're fit now, and all we want to do is go in there and put a stent in there, do a bypass, and you'll never have to worry about a heart attack. I mean, we're lucky we found it early. Yes, sir. Good naval airman. Let's go for it. Well, what did Neil die from? He didn't die of a heart attack. He died from complications resulting from cardiovascular procedures. See, the story was not all the wonderful things that Neil Armstrong did in his life. That was not the story. The headline should have been, Doctors Kill Top Astronaut! But since they have a protected monopoly, they killed him, and they're hiding. You don't know who the doctor was that killed him. But if it had been a successful thing, that it had this news conference and all the white coats and stethoscopes, and oh yeah, it was a very difficult thing, and we saved the astronaut, and how wonderful. My name is Dr. Solon. Here's my 800 number. You can call me for appointments, and it would have been a big hoo-ha, right? But since they killed him, they're not going to let you know who they are. Are you beginning to get a picture here? So if they can kill an Andy Rooney, a Dick Clark, and Neil Armstrong, and another couple of 100,000 people each year who are nameless because they're not famous. Michael Jackson, there's another one. Stupid Dr. Murray, probably snorting half of Michael's drugs. You know, Michael just happened to pick one of the dumbest, most careless doctors on earth.
One more, and then we'll move on to the stuff that you came to hear. But I think you, as parents and grandparents, you need to hear this. Because when presents are due, giving somebody a $50 Macy's gift card is nice, but it's not going to protect your kids and grandkids from these types of problems. You better be giving them the 90 essential nutrients. That'll be the best thing you can do. You'll add 25 to 50 healthy years to your life. You'll prevent all these birth defects. You're going to have to do it because the medical system's not going to do it. The government's not going to do it. You've got to do it. If you don't step up to the plate, then shame on you because you can't unlearn what you just learned tonight.